guys, so we can stay on time. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SDA webinar. Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you for letting us in your world, in your home, in your garage, wherever you are, clinic. I want to reach out to you guys and give you a digital handshake to everyone, and your commitment to improving and learning. If you have heard me in the last few months, I'm stressing the mantra that the world belongs to the learners and not to the learned. When I was a kid, and I'm older than many of you, I remember looking around with my dad, walking around there. I would say, like that guy, he's a learned man. But that implied that he was finished learning, it was complete. But now with education and knowledge changing by the second, okay? Nobody's a learned man or a learned woman. We are all learners. So in fact, like I was just talking to Dr. Khan, and he said he's been invited to speak at the PDC on a new topic, and he had to research it, and he's gonna do the topic on oral surgery. That's just, you gotta learn all the time. So thank you for the people that are committed to learning, because this is the success of our profession or your profession. I'm super happy to be here. I'm supercharged about today's program. We have great speakers, and I'm supercharged about the development in the last couple of weeks, really. Like we've been negotiating a little longer, but that the DAO has acquired, on behalf of all its members, the rights to the SDA lectures and TIA lectures. This is to me, is so huge, and it's such a big step and a courageous step from the DAO and Yaro, the president. We're negotiating with them. It is a fantastic thing, and it shows the commitment of the association. They know what's important. Education is important, and they're making it easier for everybody. For the people that are new, because we usually get, Dentures that participate at SDA, but now it's going to be a much larger group. I wanted to stress that SDA has 4 dates this year. The first one is this one, okay, February 18th. We have another 3 dates, April 15th, May 16th. Those are virtual, and then we get together face-to-face on September 9th. Okay, we'll announce the location. We're gonna see, we're gonna see how it's gonna go this way. And the reason why I'm doing it this way is because we did a survey with my TIA, and it was split 50-50. Some people want to go live, some people wanted to go virtual. And then, when we did it the live, some people were saying, well, maybe we should have done virtual, but it's organized now. It was difficult. So even for TIA, which you are allowed to come in, okay, there's 10 days, 2 have been done, but you can ask for the link and see them. Okay, you can ask for the link on today's presentation if you want to review it, and we will send it to you with the time limit. There's only a week that you have, okay, because we got to keep control over content. So the next TIA is March the 10th. We have some fantastic speakers. It's Ella Beruz, the prosthodontist, and Dr. Barami, a periodontist. But you can get all that information if you go online. When you go online at the Palmieri Media Group and you go into courses, you will see, what's available to you. For the DAO members, you will be getting a link in the login safe section of the DAO website. So you will go there, and the DAO will promote it. They will give you the link for the following lecture. We will give you the certificates. Now, yes, you will get certificate of attendance if you stay for the duration. Please don't start asking, because they can see it. We save the content, we videotape the things. We don't know what the regulatory body are going to ask. In some cases, they have asked. I guess people that have a past, okay, they say, well, did he pay? Can you show me the invoice? I don't want to get into that situation. So please, you're going to get the certificates, in the next week or 2. Sometimes we wait to see if anybody wants the on demand, and then we will do it. Like, for example, today we have over 110 people that have registered. So I don't know if the people from Vancouver will show up, or Calgary. They might ask to be on demand. So we wait until everybody's in, and then we'll send the certificates. Okay. I think you're muted. You're muted. And please turn your video off as it is distracting to the speakers, okay? Like I said, the webinar will be available on demand after the live session. If you have any questions, at the bottom, there's a chat, okay? There's a chat button. You can go there in the chat and put the questions there, and I will ask the speaker at the end, okay? If there are too many questions, then the speaker will reply to you via email later on, so we can stay on time, okay? Now, these courses are fantastic, but they could not happen without our sponsors. And I need to thank the sponsors today. Of course, one of them is Julian Kempnick, okay, with Swiss and F. Julian really supports education. He sees the value of education. And I'm sure his dad, Carl Kempnick, who started the company, would be so happy to see Julian supporting education all over. I don't see him right now, okay?
Make him co-host, I can't.
Okay. So let me see if I see Julian here. Yeah, he's in. So I gonna bring him in, make co-host. And then I think he wants to say a few words. We'll do that. And of course, I want to thank, so the Swiss and F is a sponsor today. He was excited about this partnership that we have. And then we have Stroman Neodent sponsoring Milan for the rest of the lecture. And we have Absolute also doing Absolute Denture from the US doing a presentation. Julian, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How are you?
I'm okay, Ju. You want to say a few words?
Well, first, congratulations on getting the Dentures to work with you.
Well, you know what? We're working together. I
Well,
I don't know how it developed. It developed, and I'm glad that they're visionaries. That their board, they're visionary. They realize, and I was reading this morning before we got on their, their press release, and I'm glad they said, they compared value and they did an analysis. I'm glad, and they wanted to work with Palmieri. And me, I like to give value big time, okay?
Right.
So this is I'm just happy that it worked out, and the potential is going to be great. Because my thing is education, and some people love education. So you get crazy kooks like Dr. Khan. He'll come to Vancouver on his own dime. He pays for himself. He shows up to lecture, to spread this thing. It is unbelievable what we're able to create, with the time,
Well, I think it's about time they came, because me and you deal with education all the time, and it's not easy to get the guys, to pull somebody from the United States or from Europe to come in. You need to know the numbers are there, and I find this is a great way for us to share without having to try to fly a whole guy in here. Set them up, do a whole live lecture. This way we can spread it out much more, I find.
Yeah,
this way I can bring certain people, like last weekend when we had the guys from Spain come on, right?
Yeah.
We had 2 guys on from Spain, Mark hosting it, right? And it worked. And they were able to show basically what they wanted to do, where this would have been a pain in the ass. We would have had to time it in when they came in from Chicago and tried to do all this stuff. And you just can't. Me and you've done lectures, and we've been doing this for 20 years together, and minimum. And how often did we show up at Joe's place? Thank you, Joe Smith, for helping us out for many years, right? Great guy. Yeah. But you get there and it ends up being it really, for me, it became the same guys who I saw who were sort of semi-retired were showing up because their wives were throwing them out of the house in the morning, right? This way I think we have a much deeper, larger field of people.
It's going to be large, Joe. It's going to be large because, like I said, today we are over 110, okay? And maybe we have them from Vancouver, we have them from Alberta, we have them from New Brunswick. And if they don't get it now, they're gonna see it because they pay. Okay, they pay. So they ask for the link later on. But the beauty is this, the way I see it, DAO will provide outstanding speakers like we have today, and then they can review it. They can learn at their own time at a later date. But guess what? They can reach the remote areas because they also need education. Their members need education, and then they can come if they want face-to-face to PYP, which is going to be in June, I think Yaro told me this year. And then, they come to Spectrum Day Toronto. Man, this is going to be an amazing thing, alliance. Anyways, but at the same time, Julian, we could not do everything without the sponsors. And I know you're a reliable sponsor. So
Yeah.
I thank
Yeah,
you.
text in the morning, you're there? Yes, I'm awake, I'm moving, right? Trying not to piss off my wife getting out of bed. Yes, I'm there.
You know, Joe, I tell you something. I don't know, Waji, I don't know if you knew Julian's father, Carl, Kepnick. He was an amazing guy. And so, as he was getting old and he was sick, he says, hey, can you keep an eye on Julian, him? And I said, Carl, do you think anybody can keep an eye on Julian, for God's sake? But I'm glad he gets up and he does, so yes, I text him, get out of bed, blah, blah, blah. And it's great. Thank you, Drew. We love you. And thank
Waji,
you.
have a great lecture, my friend.
Thanks, buddy.
All right.
Okay.
And you're
So
going to rock it
anyways,
as usual.
Let me introduce Dr. Waji Khan.
All right, I'm out.
That mustache does not need an introduction, but we'll introduce him. He's a graduate of the Toronto Faculty of Dentistry, and he was a dental officer in the Canadian Army, and that's why he's so polite. I just love talking to Waji. I always feel that respect. I don't know if he means it or not. It's always, yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, sir. No, sir. And I go, man, this guy, unbelievable. 10 years in the Canadian Armed Forces. Then he moved to Kingston with his wife and life partner, Dr. Suel Abaid, a really beautiful and wonderful person. He enjoys working in all areas of dentistry. Okay, he has a particular interest in cosmetic, aesthetic, implant, sedation, restorative orthodontics, and surgical dentistry. And he's dedicated to providing healthcare in a comfortable and welcoming environment. But most important, he's willing to share the knowledge that he has. So I'm not going to say much more, Waji. I'm going to turn it over to you, and we'll listen very, very carefully. Let's go.
Beautiful. Let's go.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, and we can see you. And now we can see you. You're sharing the screen, Waji.
Perfect. I'm just waiting for this to start.
There you go. Yeah, you got full screen now, Waji.
You got some music?
Yeah, no music. I don't hear any music.
Okay, so I'm the executive director of the Top Gun Dental Implant Study Club. This is something I started up back in 2016. It's a free resource for people to basically, the club has one goal, to make everyone better. So if you're interested, please check out our website and join. A little bit of background, Tori's given me a nice introduction. This is where sort of like my journey, kind of how I got to where I got. Tori, can you hear me?
Yes, Waji. Everything is cool.
Just making sure everything's good. Okay, so this presentation is action-packed. I got a bunch of material here for you, so I'm not going to waste too much time talking about myself. There are the things that keep me motivated. My 2 kids and my lovely wife, and I also am the owner of the Catwoods Dental Implant Institute. Implant solutions is something we try to provide for our patients. Just a bit of a disclaimer here, and just a bit of disclosure. All of the clinical pictures I'm going to show you, they're all my cases. None of the pictures have been altered, and I borrowed some product images for the purposes of augmenting this presentation. Possibly, I'll tell you where those are. So today's presentation is about case presentations using digital dentistry to basically go from complete dentures to full mouth rehabilitation for patients. And the presentation is, as opposed to me sitting here and telling you what to do, which is kind of what I'm going to do, but it's going to be the experiential learning through the journey of case studies. And I'm going to start off and tell you guys that you own a handmade custom suit, right? And you pay like $5,000 or $10,000 for 3 fittings and all that sort of stuff here. Or you can just send your measurements into somebody and they will stick it in a computer and make something for you. What's better, right? That's a rhetorical question, because you know what is better, the $1,000 computer-made suit or the $10,000 handmade suit. I think, people use the term digital and analog almost like it's derogatory, but I can tell you there are some outstanding denturists out there who, you talk about Kasparov, the chess player, and the IBM computer Blue that they made, and Kasparov used to always win, and finally the computer beat him because they programmed the computer with everything that he does. So they actually programmed it just to play against him, and then he played the computer again. And he said, "All right, I'm going to play like Waji Khan," and he beat the computer. So just to say a bit of an aside, I think digital. Remember this line here. It's not my line, but digital dentistry will not make you a better denturist, okay? But digital dentistry will make a good denturist into a phenomenal denturist. So what can we do, or what can we utilize that's going to sort of help us out? So there's kind of 4 dying entities with digital. And as you can see in my presentation here, using cases, we actually still do use some of these modalities in our practice. So the analog face photo is kind of, something which is kind of gone. Bite registration material is kind of gone, even though digital claims didn't get the bite bang on. Believe it or not, there's many cases where digital has, failed us. The analog articulator is another one, along with the face photo. I think those 2 are really things that digital has kind of really replaced. And then finally, the analog wax up is definitely something which we don't utilize that much anymore, just because you can get fairly decent wax ups and designs using exocad or using computers. So when we talk about digital dentistry, a lot of people sit there and say that they're a digital dentist, and I'm not sure what people's frustrations are, but what I've found is many labs, they claim to be digital, but they're not, right? There's one lab we were utilizing, I'm not going to name the lab, but they were like, if you scan it to us, and so we'd scan the patient for an appliance, and they'd end up basically just printing the model. And I'm like, all right, we could have taken an impression and mailed it to you, like what the hell? And then they're charging us, a fair amount for having printed this digital model. And I was like, okay, how's this digital dentistry? Like, I mean, like, the whole purpose of digital is for me to scan something, for you to design it using exocad or some sort of a program, and then from there be able to fabricate some sort of an appliance or prosthesis where there's really none of that model interface. So ultimately, there's 6 levels is what is kind of described by the gurus out there. Level 1 is photos. If you're not taking pictures of your cases, you're failing yourself. Photos are phenomenal, and you can get a fairly decent camera. Now, I use SLR. I'm not into this iPhone shindiggy, or like even just the pocket dial kind of phones and stuff. Cameras and stuff like that. So Lester Dine has been a resource for many years. They're kind of like, in my opinion, the leader for clinical photography. I missed my Yashica Dental i3, which was probably one of the best dental cameras ever. Unfortunately, it was a film-based camera, and they never quite made the transition over to digital. So that's level 1. Level 2 is 2D design. Sorry, level 1, a good camera, about $2,000, right, with a decent ring flash and stuff like that. You can get the diffusers and all that sort of stuff as well. I'm more of a clinician, so I like using the ring flash. But if you want something that's going to have nicer lighting and stuff to it, the diffusers are pretty decent. Level 2 is 2D design. So we utilize a program like Digital Smile Design templates and stuff. Now you can buy it, or I believe Gil Hagee, he sells a program called Smile Design Pro or something like that. You can buy these things, but like ultimately what it comes down to is these are there for you to utilize as a tool in practice to sort of help gauge whether things are looking like you want them to look. But more importantly, these are just tools that are available to you to, a picture's worth 1,000 words, show the case to the patient and sell the treatment. Level 3 is getting into some form of intraoral scanning or CBCT. We utilize our CBCT machine all the time, along with the planning, the 3D wax ups. And you can basically stitch all these things in along with the intraoral scans and fabricate fairly decent guides that are going to give you an opportunity to make restorations that look like teeth. So a scanner is anywhere from $15,000 to $70,000 and $80,000 to $200,000 for a CBCT. Level 4 is some form of computer design. There's some that are available for free and you just pay for the output, like Blue Sky Bio. There's Rebel Dental Lab. This is Chris Coachman and orthodontist in Turkey named Galop Gurel. You just upload your STL files, and they have a questionnaire that you give the patient, and the questionnaire basically helps sort of kind of match the face to the teeth. It's something called Visagi Smile or Visagisms in Dentistry. You can Google that, or if you want the article, I can send it to you by Dr. Gurel. It's a fairly interesting read, and obviously this is applicable to your denture practice as well. And then lastly, if you want to get you start doing stuff in-house, I just bought the $16,000 version of exocad. Why? I mean, people are like, well, you're busy or doing other stuff. I just bought it for fun. Like, I mean, like, you know, we do this stuff on a Saturday morning, not necessarily to make money, but because we kind of want to push the envelope and see where things get. Then you can get into things like 3D printing. I'm not sure if, once again, I think, you know, and I'm going to plead my own ignorance here. When I graduated from dental school, I had no idea what the difference was between like cold cure acrylic, processed acrylic, like the IvoCAD, I forgot the other name of the other machine, versus like processed acrylic, versus like, you know, some of the other things. Even with teeth, I thought all teeth are the same. And, you know, eventually I realized that if you're buying like Fonaris 2 teeth, you know, they're much more durable and temperature resistant versus like Okinachi teeth, where if the patient's having a hot coffee, the teeth are just melting in their mouth. And I'm just telling you that because I'm sure some of my colleagues out there don't know this either. You know, you're obviously providing a better service for the patient. Also, if you start getting into implant supported prosthesis, you know, it's kind of like if someone's got a denture just sitting on tissue, that's one thing. Many times we'll get people coming in saying, hey, I want to get some implants done. Can I get these implants relined to my existing denture? And I'm like, well, I have no idea what the teeth are. I have no idea what the acrylic is. You know, if it was made by a, you know, Dentures colleague of mine, and they're like, yeah, we feel comfortable working with this, great. But many times you find that you'll reline the denture. It's like sticking a Ferrari engine in a Honda Civic. Like, you're going to blow the chassis, right? So you sit there and you reline a denture using cold cure acrylic versus processed. To some, you know, pair of locators, and the patient comes back, you know, 2 years later, and the locators are sitting on the implants, or the locator housings are sitting on the locators in the mouth on the implants, and the denture is falling apart. How do I know about this? Because I've been guilty of having done this. So yeah, so 3D printing, I'm not really sure what the quality of the resins or the acrylics are. There's some decent ones out there, but there's no reason why 3D printing can't be added to at least trial things for people, as opposed to having to spend the time waxing things up. And then lastly, you can get into milling. Once again, you know, there's challenges with respect to, you got to design something that's going to be milled. A lot of people sit there and think they know what it is that they're doing, but they don't. And so sometimes you'll get milled products that are that aren't that great. Okay, so this is the camera I use, the Nikon D3100 with the ring flash from Lester Dine. Some of you might be sitting there saying, oh, okay, you know what, well, so go buy a nicer camera. No, buy a cheap camera, man, right? Just because the majority of the time when I'm taking pictures, people say, how do you take so many pictures while you're working? I just take a glove. And yeah, I don't know if I can do this here with this computer, but just right here, laser pointer, yeah, laser pointer. So I just sort of put a glove right on top of the trigger here. So get all your settings down. If you have small hands, you can put a glove over here as well, so to balance things out. But I got a big oven mitt. There's no way in hell you're doing a one-handed approach using my Nikon D700 here with this lens. But this is nice and light. It doesn't weigh very much. Put a glove on it, and you can shoot lots of pictures for your patients. So moving on to the next slide, this is just a template for digital smile design. So you have all these cool things here. You got the, you know, obviously ideal golden proportion smile with the gingival zenith and the progression of contacts. You have the facial thirds and facial fifths. If you add two more lines here, analyzer, here's another teeth one, a couple other just teeth designs, something you can put on the occlusal. If you don't want to put teeth in, you can use this shindiggy here. And there's also some of the rulers here. You can measure the model, then all you have to do is go on Photoshop or PowerPoint or something and calibrate this ruler to give you an idea of what you need to do clinically. The only thing I'll warn you about is try to avoid using overlays and stuff like this, just because it's a little bit more misleading than sort of this here. Because at the end, if the final product doesn't look like this, the patient's going to be like, well, the picture you gave me, it looks vastly different from what I actually have. And so it just kind of sets the bar a little high for you. You know, the old adage that we say is under promise and, you know, over deliver sort of thing. So over deliver, under promise. That's what you kind of want to do, right? So here's just an example using digital smile design for a patient. You can see, you know, she's obviously has some issues. We're going to go over the whole DSD framework with another case later, but there's just the overlay, generic overlay. There's nothing custom about this. This is just to sort of give her an idea, you know, where things are at. So it's just taking those templates and just overlaying it, you know, onto her existing teeth to give her an idea of kind of what it is that we need to do. And here's those rulers. You can sort of see we need to increase. She needs a, you know, hard and, you know, basic crown lengthening and soft tissue lengthening here. She has decent keratinized tissue, but we need to do some crown lengthening here for her in order to get her kind of to the aesthetic result that she wants. And that's the final result for her. And the DSD software is obviously there to sort of help explain to the patient. I don't want to use the term sell it to the patient, but many times patients are just looking for an explanation what they could do. You know, this patient goes and sees another dentist and says, oh yeah, we can easily, crown these teeth for you. What's he saying? You don't need crown lengthening. Well, I mean, we look at the radiograph, she's got these huge roots. I mean, if you just put teeth on here and you get it to the proper length, you're going to give her an unreasonable amount of overbite. And that'll just, if she, and protrusive and stuff like that, especially if she has bruxism habits. And here you can see there's some parafunction going on for sure. Those teeth or those crowns are going to break. Unhappy failures and unhappy cases leads to unhappy patients, and it means you're spending money out of your pocket to fix the case. Scanning, well, I mean, ultimately, there's really no, there's a number of scanners out there. They're kind of all getting better. I use the Trios 3. Trios has a 5 now, but even the Trios 3s is kick ass. There's a bunch of there. There's Kodak's got a system, iMedit's got a system, iTero's got a system. My advice is just play around with systems and find out what works best for you, but more importantly, what software they come along with and what you can utilize. This is an example of utilizing analog versus digital. So on the left, there's a denture we duplicated using the Lang duplicator and I believe the same company's pressure pot, and we just use some some jet acrylic in there. And then you can see on the right there, we scanned the denture using the Trios as well. It created an STL file, exported that, and then printed it. And you can see it does a fairly decent job of printing it. I'm not quite sure if, printing a denture is something, the base and the teeth is something which is going to have a decent fit or result versus something using processed acrylic and teeth from proper teeth like Phonaris too or something like that. But at least you can utilize these techniques to create, it gives the surgeon an idea of where things are going. It gives you an idea to try things out relatively cheap. And from a patient's perspective, it gives them an idea of kind of where things are going to look like, what their occlusion is going to be like, and stuff like that. So ultimately, it comes down to, do you have what it takes, right? I'll tell you right now, I don't play in the NBAs because I can't jump. I can't shoot. I can do dentistry, but I can't hit take it to the hole like Michael Jordan or drop a jump shot like Michael Jordan. So our agenda for today is I'm going to go over 3 cases with you where we kind of use digital dentistry. They're not pure digital cases. And as I said in the beginning, I'm a firm believer that there still is a place for analog techniques in what we do. I have a bonus case for you. It's not dentures, but sort of give you an idea of where things are at right now and some of the things that we can do with digital dentistry, printing, scanning, milling, and stuff like that in order to trial things for our patients. Howard Ferran has a line, which is always, how is this technology going to help me do dentistry faster, cheaper, and better? So before I invest into anything, how is this going to make things fast, cheaper, better, more efficient for the patient? And if you can't check those boxes, you really have to ask yourself, why is it that, what is it that you're actually buying? So strategy structure questions to ask every patient is about medical history, diabetes, smoking addictions. How did you lose your teeth? What did you not like about your current dentures? Retention, palate removable? Do you grind your teeth? What do you expect to be able to do with your prosthesis? And what's your budget or maintenance budget? So, you want to ask about things like smoking, diabetes, medical history, stuff like that, just because that's going to give you an idea of what it is that this patient's going to ultimately be seeking, or what it is that you're going to be able to do, or do you even want to work on this case? Question number 2 is, how did you lose your teeth, right? Like many times I'll get patients who come in and say, neglect's the reason they lost their teeth. Or they'll blame their mother and father and say, I was born with soft teeth. And it's like, okay, don't blame your mom and dad, man. Obviously I didn't see you in the ring with Mike Tyson. So, you need to have some insight here, because ultimately, if you provide them with some sort of an expensive dental implant solution, when that fails because you didn't rehabilitate the person, they're going to be blaming you for you're going to be the victim of their locus of control, their external locus of control, and saying that it's your fault, when in reality it's their fault, right? What do you not like about your current dentures? Retention, palate removable. Once again, these things guide some of the things that we're going to be doing for people. Do you grind your teeth? Bruxism is kind of the grim reaper of implant dentistry. So you have patients who'll come in with complete dentures and they lost their teeth because they fractured them, caries. They had a bruxism habit. That habit doesn't really go away. So once you sit there and you give them a nice implant supported prosthesis, whether it be removable or fixed, guess what? That bruxism habit comes back, and that can be something which can lead to failure for your patients as well. What do you expect to be able to do with this prosthesis? So, I get a guy who comes in and says, I want to eat steak, I want to eat an apple, I want to be comfortable, that sort of stuff. Or some people just come in and say, you know what, I just don't want my dentures flopping around. I got my granddaughter's wedding coming up this fall, and the speaker's going to tell a lot of jokes, and the last time I went to one, my dentures went flying across the room. So they sometimes that you have to ask them what it is that they're expecting from a function perspective. And then lastly, like anything, people always say, so do these things last forever? I'm like, no, they don't last forever. Prosthetic hip lasts 15, 20 years. Prosthetic knee, like 15, 20 years. Crown lasts 20 years. That's what we tell people in dental school. Bridge lasts 15 years. That's what we tell people in dental school. So why is it that people think that implant supported prostheses, whether it be fixed or removable, is going to be something that's going to last forever? It's not going to last forever. You're going to have to replace it at some point in time. And there's also a maintenance budget you have to go for as well. Whether it be like, locators, you probably have those inserts changed every, 6 to 12 months. Depending on the angulation. Like I always get my implants parallel, but even with that, how often the person's popping it in and out. Some people just develop a habit to click and unclick their denture in their mouth as some sort of a tick movement. Obviously, that's going to mean you're going to have to replace those things sooner. The locators, depending on what the patient's doing. If you're just getting friction, sometimes they have to be changed every 5 years. Sometimes I find with patients who have given 4 implants and locators, they just treat those locators like teeth, and they'll sit there and chew nuts and all types of things on there, and they'll bend the locator, and then they'll come back and say, my denture doesn't click down. It's like, yeah, it's because you bent the locator. So you got to talk to them about these things. Sometimes put it in the form of a pamphlet. Just ask them to read it, and then obviously sign a form that they read it. They had no question. The questions were answered, and you asked them questions as well. So the first case we're just going to go over here is FP1 zirconia complete upper denture. This is a fixed denture using some traditional methods. So this patient comes in. He comes in. Obviously, you can see there's some issues going on here. He's wearing some partials in the maxilla. Unfortunately, the cast partials in the mandible, many times that major connector, whether it's lingual or an apron or a sublingual bar, those things are very uncomfortable for people and they won't wear them. So in his case, he just wasn't even wearing the lower partial denture, as you can see here. It's been made fairly well, but he just wasn't wearing it. And so that's sort of the picture of how things looked radiographically in the mouth with the dentures in place. And you can see the maxillary teeth. There's some bone loss, progressive bone loss. There's some other caries and a bunch of other things going on here. So we have to have a difficult conversation about edentulating this patient, the end of teeth discussion. And he was game for that, but he didn't want to go with something where he's going to have to have a complete denture without having something nice. So in his case here, sorry, I was going to move this the Zoom picture here because it's blocking my screen. 58-year-old male. He takes aspirin for daily preventative therapy, and Crestor, which is a statin medication for cholesterol management. He tells us he lost his teeth as a result of neglect. He wants retention, not like his friends who have dentures flying across the room. Does he grind his teeth? He says no. He's ultimately expecting just to be able to eat better because he's saying he's not able to eat lots of things because obviously the teeth are moving around on him. There's bone loss and stuff going on. And he says he has around $30,000 to spend and he'd like a fixed solution. So using the cone beam CT in his case, we already showed you the picture kind of with like the digital smile design idea. I haven't shown that to you. I should at some point in time. So, photography, digital smile design, scan something, take a CBCT. We didn't get to the point where we were doing any 3D design work with him using ExoCAD or printing or milling anything here. But sorry, the final crowns aren't milled. But using the CT scan, you can sort of get an idea where there's some decent bone. You can see that there's an apical lesion here, which is going to prevent us from placing an implant in this position and getting good primary stability. But, outline kind of like 6 implants for him. He's got decent bone and stuff like that. And I feel confident that this is going to be a case that's going to be successful. So there's the DSD picture for him. You can see that the midline is off. This is something which even in denture cases, something you should probably utilize. I'll show you a case later on where we didn't utilize it from the beginning. And it wasn't the end of the world, but it just sort of like, adds a surprise to the treatment plan for what it is that you need to do. So just some lateral views of this patient here. And so you can see these teeth. for this patient. That's kind of our plan. The arch is a bit narrow. You have these mandibular teeth as well. He's going to want to get implants in the mandible at some point in time. It's just not in the budget right now. So we're going to try to basically maintain the mandibular teeth for him. And we had a nice discussion with him about that. So once the partial comes out, you can sort of see where the caries and some of the failure of the existing dentistry that he had. And so it's just a matter of removing those bad teeth for him, sinking some implants into our proposed positions for him. I always like to place my first implant and then either use some sort of impression coping or guide, or sorry, not guide, a transfer pin or something, just to give you an idea of where what direction they're in. So if you want to get parallelism, that's how you do it, right? So you can sort of see here that 6 implants have been placed, but obviously the 1 and the 2-1, because of that apical lesion I discussed earlier, is going to prevent us from going into that position initially. So me being the mustache guy with the nicely ex-army iron shirts and stuff, I wanted to have symmetry in the case. So we actually ended up placing 8 implants in this case, but 6 would have been more than enough. So there's the first 6 in for him, and we're also going to sit there and remove this root tip over here, and then he's going to get an acrylic partial lower denture, because there's no point in spending any more money and getting him something cast. We'll just give him an acrylic partial lower just to make sure we're not pounding down on those anterior teeth too much, and that he's going to be using molars for chewing appropriately. So those lower teeth, as I mentioned, other than the one we took out there, it's just etch, prime, bond, a little bit of composite resin there, just to clean those up. We're going to try to keep those for him for about 2 or 3 years. And in his particular case, that our plan did last, and we eventually did restore the mandible for him as well. So he comes back after a couple months, and we do a stage 2 procedure on him, put some healing abutments on there, and just basically help mold our soft tissue. If you want, at this point, you can also stick some scan bodies on there, send it off to a lab, and have something designed, and then you can actually print a temporary that you can put on for the patient, and you'll see that in a couple later cases. So here we go. The 2-1 has an implant in it now, and I placed another implant just on the other side, just to balance things, because I like it looking like that. But eight was too much. 6 would have been more than enough. So you can sort of see your patient sutured up, and there's all the implants in place, along with the ones out that we sort of discussed. So he comes back, and you can sort of see that everything's looking good. We placed some multi-unit abutments onto those implants because this is a Neodent Grand Morse implant, and going direct to fixture is just something which is not possible with this implant system. So you need to use the multi-unit abutments. Sometimes with the temporaries, even the final prostheses, we didn't do it in this case, but there's a product called Rosen screws. If you're not familiar with them, they kind of have this like Morse taper cone shape. Go to the website rosenscrew.com, and ultimately you can actually have things milled or printed. So if you have a temp, you can have a temp printed that'll go directly onto these multi-unit abutments. You don't have to cement any tie bases and stuff, and that's perfect because one less interface to fail. You can also just have the zirconia prosthesis milled directly to the multi-unit abutments using the Rosen screw as well. So once again, that's Rosen screw, R-O-S-E-N screw. They come in a bunch of lengths. This system here would be a 1.4 millimeter screw, but we didn't use that in this case here. So the multi-unit covers go on, and then we're just doing traditional conversion for this patient. So we take a couple of temporary cylinders. He has, take an x-ray to make sure those are seated. You always want to take this x-ray to make sure things are seated. I can show you some nightmare cases where people said, yeah, no, I felt it click in. No, sometimes you can get bone and soft tissue and all types of crap going on. You just take a radiograph. It's just too easy to take an x-ray. If you don't have a partnership with a dentist you're working with, find someone who will give you a partnership and just take a radiograph to make sure things are seated. Same thing with dentures and stuff. A lot of guys I work with, denturists and stuff, I'll tell the patients, yeah, once the denture's made, come back and see me, and we'll take an x-ray with the denture in. And all you want to see is make sure that there's little halos around those locators to make sure that it's seated properly, because ultimately this leads to happy patients. Happy patients leads to more referrals. More referrals means more business and more money in your pocket. So I just lock these together using some composite resin. You can use GC pattern resin. You can use Triad, use anything. This is a more expensive way of doing it, but I don't like this. I don't like the smell of methacrylate in my office. It's just kind of, yeah. So composites, it will cost a little bit more money, but I mean, hey, there's a reason why, I drink nice coffee. I don't drink the crappy stuff. So, okay. So there's the denture in place. And then my denture is colleague basically just do a little bit of a pickup impression here using some PVS material Obviously, we add some analogs onto this impression coping as well. And then I'm not going to teach you guys how to do this because you guys are the dentures. You guys are the ones doing this for us, right? So you know, standard, conversion techniques. He threw some wax on there. You know, but on the top of the temporary cylinders, you know, grinds a bunch of things out. There's a model that's been poured up utilizing that impression. Then, of course, you know, the temporary cylinders go on that, puts the denture back on, wax to cover those holes, and then some sort of a separating agent, which is placed. And then I'm not sure what this little contraption is. I believe he's using ProBase here, ProBase. And this is basically to sort of help fill up some of the voids. You know, puts it on stone and uses this compression vise tool, and then of course puts that in a pressure pot to make sure we get a nice cure of that acrylic. Grind the excess acrylic off. You've obviously got those the wax there to include those holes, so no acrylic went inside there. And that's the final. That's the final processed result. And then obviously that's the final converted result. And you want to make sure you leave at least 2 millimeters of acrylic around these cylinders. And this is one of the things also when you're doing DSD, things that you can plan. Sorry, not DSD, a CBCT with the intraoral scan planning. I'll show you a little later. You can actually plan to make sure you have adequate acrylic around these areas, because if you don't, that's going to be you know, a weak area. Now these things always break in the weakest areas. Try also not to have too much of a cantilever, because those can break as well. You can tell people to eat soft foods with these things, and I always tell them soft is whatever you can eat with a plastic spoon, right? So if you can cut it with a plastic spoon, it's soft. If you can't cut it with a plastic spoon, not a plastic fork, not a plastic knife, a plastic spoon, you can eat it, right? If you can't, then you can't eat it, right? You're gonna break it. But you know, many times people don't listen. So there's the occlusal shot of this conversion, and we gave this to the guy about a week later. You'll also, so another pet peeve of mine is when people want same day conversions. What do you want a same day conversion for, man? The guy's just got surgery done. He's all beat up. He's all swollen. He's all bruised. Kind of reminds me when I worked in the obstetrics ward and women were giving birth to children. And, you know, being the only guy on the ward, you know, some guy walk up to you and be like, yo, man, when can I lay? And you're like, come on, man. They're like, she just passed a beast through there. Like, give her some time off. So, like, you know, you're sitting there, you know, with these patients, and half the time they're, you know, they're bruised up, you know, they're in pain and stuff like that. You know, you don't want them, you know, getting food and stuff stuck underneath the suture lines and stuff. So I'm a firm believer, and I give them these prostheses a week later. They come back, you know, we take a look at the incision lines, we take the stitches out for them, and we gently insert these prostheses for them. There's some people say, well, you want to immediately load the ridge. These guys aren't going to be loading this ridge, man. They're not sitting there eating like, you know, like jawbreakers and stuff like that. You know, the whole thing about immediate load and bone loss, it's kind of one of those misunderstood things. At least in my 22 years of practice, I've seen people, you take teeth out, you give them immediate dentures, and they got ridiculous bone loss. I see people who you take their teeth out, you give them nothing, they're just gumming it, and they got huge ridges when they come in for their consults. So there's a picture of everything, and obviously you want to make sure that the patient can clean underneath this using a Proxa brush. I don't like water picks just because it's basically a glorified squirt gun sort of thing. You know, if you know how to use it works great. I want them using the floss thinners and the Proxa brushes. So before they leave the office, they have to demonstrate to me that they can do that. And there's a picture of the patient smiling. Now you can also take these photographs once again with the patient and all those DSD templates and see if you got the midline, you got the occlusal plane and all that stuff right. We didn't do that in this case, but you can see we do it for the final. So there's just another working model here. And my Dentures colleague basically makes me a nice base plate, which we utilize on the model in the mouth. We reline it with some soft, some light body impression material. We send this, you know, with a occlusal wax rim as well, and just using our traditional methods here. Mark our midline, mark our smile line, take a little bit of an occlusal record using some basically it's like silicone. They call it it's bite registration material from Maxell, but my buddy basically says, you know, it's a tube of silicone from Home Hardware or Home Depot or something. But nonetheless, send these off to the lab. Of course, the patient comes back and voila, just as you predicted, or I predicted, or anyone predicted, it got a fracture of the temporary. And of course, the patient wants that fixed. And so there's a picture on the right where that's been fixed for the patient. So the lab basically sends us back this wax up. You could do this digitally as well if you want, and print it on some sort of a temporary cylinder. And you can sort of see it's kind of, we use an articulator in this case here, even though it's a dying entity. In the digital world, you don't utilize this, but we tried this in for the patient, and you can just sort of see, okay, was this guy homeless or something? What's going on here? So there's the patient smiling, and we just take our DSD templates, and you can see that not only is there a cant and the midline's off, so we send this photograph over to the lab. You can use the DSD rulers here as well. So basically, you know how long this tooth is. So just bring the ruler in, calibrate the length of this tooth, and the lab knows exactly how much they have to shift things for the patient. So you can sort of see that's been corrected here in the articulator as well. And the patient comes back, and now you can see that, yeah, the midline has been corrected, but you still have a cant there for us. So that, once again, send this picture over to the lab and ask the lab or the technician, whoever's working on it, to fix that. And you can bring the DSD templates on there as well, just to demonstrate that for the lab. Finally, we have a zirconia framework, which is milled. And as I mentioned, if you have rosin screws, you don't have to get these titanium bases that you cement the prosthesis onto. So once again, one last thing, my colleague, Dr. Emil Svoboda, great guy. I look up to him. Don't tell him that. He's a mentor of mine. He always says, why add another variable for failure? So, this is just another variable for failure. So rosin screw gives you the opportunity to sort of bypass this. And we try this framework in for the patient. Other things that you can do. This is my colleague Ricardo Kern. I borrowed this picture from him. He makes his temporaries and basically scallops the soft tissue model. You can either pour this up or print this, and then just relines the temporary using some sort of acrylic, and then he'll insert that into the patient, getting just beautiful soft tissue results. And you can utilize pattern resin here as well to make a custom gingival impression index. That's what he calls it, right? And just look at that tissue. That's just absolutely gorgeous, right? He takes, I think, 6 months to a year to do some of these rehabilitation cases. The guy's just an outstanding clinician, and he's very motivates the rest of us. Of course, like Michael Jordan, we sit there and we try to do this, and we're like, it doesn't quite look the same. Not everyone can do it, but you try your best. That's what we try to do. So, and that's Ricardo's case once things are finally inserted, which looks really nice. You'll see the last case I show you, I'm kind of getting to that point. Okay, so we tried the zirconia framework in for the patient. Once again, take your DSD templates. Okay, the midline looks pretty good. The cant is not as bad as before. Put the DSD templates on top. The lab should be able to fix that little bit of cant with some more acrylic, some more zirconia for us. And we take a look there. I'm happy with that. And there's the final prosthesis for this patient with those tie bases cemented in. And ultimately, I'm happy with this. I think this looks great. I thought this looked amazing. I mean, look at that. That looks wild. I mean, wow. That's just, wow. I'm happy with that. He's smiling. I'm like, you know what? We're going dancing tonight, man. This looks great. Let's go out on the town. The only problem is he went home and his wife said he looks too good. I figured maybe, and he comes back. He said, can you make it look like, not as perfect sort of thing? I said to the guy, buddy, when you buy a Rolls Royce, do you ask the guy to kick the crap out of the doors so they put some dings and dents into it? You just paid me like $30,000 to do this for you. What the heck? This looks good. Nonetheless, patient's always right. So he comes back, and we asked the lab to make more diminutive looking teeth, because he said that that's kind of what he feels like his teeth should look like. And so we insert this. This was the lab's first attempt at it. Just putting some pink zirconia on there. I was like, no, that's not going to fly. You got to give this guy smaller teeth. And as you can see right here, also, he wanted his diastema back as well. So in retrospect, I'm happy that we placed 8 implants, because now we have a 4-unit bridge and a 4-unit bridge on either side. Sometimes it's the law of unforeseen consequences. You don't plan for something, but ends up working out fairly nicely for you. And that's what we have for him in this case. And he came back a couple of years later, and he got the mandible done just last year after COVID and stuff. So everything looks great for him. Case number 2. Any questions after case number 1?
Waji, they usually wait until the end to end to ask the questions. Do you want them to ask us after each case? You can. That's no problem.
Whatever they want. I mean,
okay. Okay, guys, if you have questions, just put them on the chat, and then I will read them to Waji. You just focus on the lecture. Thank you.
Okay, so case 2, FP1 zirconia complete upper denture using some digital methods. So in that case, we use some digital methods, and this one we use a few more with just printing and stuff like that. So this lovely patient right here, who I swear to God, I thought this was Alexander Ovechkin's father. I was like, man, you look like Alexander Ovechkin, bro. But yeah, big woolly guy, super nice guy. And, he's got a nice mustache as well. Not as cool as mine, but it looked okay, right? And you can sort of see he's kind of in the end stage dentition situation as well. This was another case where he wants to do the maxilla this year and, maybe do the mandible sometime later. So you look at some radiographs here, and a bit of a problem is he already has an implant, and it's a Straumann implant, and it's actually in a decent position, and it looks pretty good.
Waji,
Yeah.
now a question came in from Dr. Ashraf Awadallah. Do you think the anterior teeth are too long for his age?
I'm not really sure I could say that they're too long. You mean the version number 1? Was it too long? The problem in his case was the lab really needed to use, it was really an FP2 case. We wanted to do an FP1, and the lab gave us really long teeth. His smile line wasn't that crazy, so I thought it looked good in terms of shape and stuff like that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if you would take a look at it from the golden proportion perspective, it wasn't your classic golden proportions. Thank you for the question. So going back here to this gentleman here, this is some bone loss going on in the maxilla. Same thing with the mandible. So once again, we're going to try to maintain the mandible for him as long as we can, and motor go from there. So sorry, what happened here? So yeah, so this once again, the CBCT gives you the opportunity to really present things, gives you all these pictures. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Picture helps sell the case in terms of what you're planning on doing. We take a look at the CT scan for the patient as well. You can just sort of see a bunch of periapical lesions. The implant, however, is, other than the fact that it's buccally positioned and it's a tissue level implant from Straumann, we have 2 choices: either take it out and butcher the guy, or do we, and he trusted me, and I just kind of said, in this case here, I said, we'll make it a game day decision. We'll see how the surgery goes. So you can sort of see the condition of the teeth. Unfortunately, they weren't that great. And then, you can place your implants in this as well. And once again, it gives the patient an idea of what it is that you need to do. So we're going to place 6 implants. We got bilateral sinus lifts. I think one's a sinus lift, one ends up being a sinus bump for him. And of course, here's the position that we want this implant. So can we just use this one? So it was kind of one of those things. I was like, man, do I take it out? Do I really want to butcher this guy? He looks like he can beat me up. Maybe we'll see if we can make it work. Worst case scenario, we got to go back and take it out and just keep him in temps longer. And he was a cool patient. Yeah, he's basically, he trusted me. I mean, obviously sitting in my chair, you're going to trust my clinical judgment and see if we can knock it out of the park for him. So once again, CT images just help sort of describe to the patient what it is that you're going to need to do. You can sort of see here, we're going to need to do a sinus lift for this patient or a sinus bump for this patient to the 2-6 position. 1-6 was a sinus lift. Once again, here's another image showing you that sinus bump. There's a root tip that's left in there. It was pretty much ankylosed. We actually left it in, believe it or not, just because I was fearful that if we remove it, we're going to lose a lot of that bone as well. And this being a tissue level implant, the last thing I want is to lose the tissue and have that thing sticking out like a sore thumb. So there's the final surgery for him. This was done for him last year. You can see there was a sinus lift done here, sinus bump done over here. We left this implant, and all the other implants look fairly good. I'm happy with that. And here's the actual surgical procedure. Flap everything back. Hopefully you guys like blood. Place some implants for the patient, make sure they're nice and parallel. There's the window for the sinus lift. And then all the implants are in position. And we stitch him up, put some helium abutments on, and then he goes out the door with an immediate transitional complete upper denture. You can bring the patient back and reline this with some Co-Soft or Tempo or whatever material it is that you like. And he comes back a week later. You can sort of see stitches are now removed, and he trooped it out for a week. And now we can sort of get going to the next stage. So here's some scan bodies that have been placed. Once again, this is the important reason why you take radiographs. See, it's not seated. That's seated, seated. That is not seated, right? So this is one of the reasons why you want to take radiographs to make sure things are seated. The one thing I like about this is Implant Direct. Their scan bodies have a metal base. This is the Straumann scan body. You see, it's just PEEK material. So I'm like, okay, let's see. Well, we pray. Say some prayers and hope that was seated. And so we sent this off to a lab utilizing the Visagi Smile template, or sorry, the questionnaire, and then they basically design for us, and we print temporary. So you see, this is the temporary for the patient. Obviously, from the day we scanned him to the day we inserted it, you can see that there's been some soft tissue shrinkage, and so we're going to rescan him and send this back. But you can sort of see here, these are not Rosen screws, but these are just regular screws. If you want to use Rosen screws, you need to have a multi-unit abutment. But you can sort of see that these are seated nicely for him. There's just a picture after we tried to, I used denture methods on this. So I was using pumice and not rouge, what's that stuff called? Fabuluster, right? Generally with these acrylic things, the easiest way to polish these is just clean them off, use a burr or some sort of a stone or something, and then just take the printing resin that you're using with a brush and just paint it on top and light cure it, and you get a beautiful, beautiful result. I'll show you that in the last case. So here we go. So here's basically where the patient wants things. You can sort of see from a planning perspective, our holes are coming out the incisal. So we're going to have to use some multi-unit abutments to change the angulation just by 17 degrees for him so that we can avoid this situation. And there's the remade version for the patient. And ultimately, I wasn't really happy with this. You're probably wondering, well, hold on, did you just give it to him like this? Yeah, we just gave it to him like that. There are products out there, I believe that's the next screen, like Anax USA. They make these gingival paste that you can go back and basically paint these temporaries to look like natural gums and stuff like that. And these kits are not that expensive. This is like 1,400 Canadian dollars. This is a product which is actually developed by Christopher Coachman. In his case, I ended up going to my Dentures buddy and saying, hey, can we do the same thing we did with the last patient? And he was very happy to help me do a conversion. And you can see my friend did a much better job than what our digital approach was going to do, right? Including the occlusal plane and the midlines look really good on this guy as well. And there's the photograph. Basically, he utilized 4 of those implants. And this was an implant direct system. So you can sort of see, you don't need to add composite because the screws match the chimneys perfectly, right? So that's another step that, you don't have to do Teflon and composite and stuff like that, which is pretty awesome. Of course, he broke that as well because you can break anything, man, right? So he broke that. We had to repair that. And then eventually we just moved to a final prosthesis for him. And there's the final prosthesis in zirconia with some painted zinc, painted pink zirconia as well. And as Dr. Abadali, you were asking earlier about the length. Yeah, no, the length, had we just left it as like white porcelain, yeah, it's too long. You really got to add that pink porcelain. Maybe as we went by that slide a little too fast. Watch it again. You'll see that the lab did add pink porcelain, try to give you that golden proportion look. And that was the occlusal view. I wasn't that happy with the occlusal just because I kind of like it when there's, nice embrasures here and it kind of looks like teeth. But unfortunately, that's me just being extra picky. Most patients, they don't really notice this sort of stuff. And there's a picture of him with his bite, and we'll work on the mandible afterwards for him. You can also take your DSD pictures here and throw those templates on and make sure the midline, the cants, and everything looks good. And there's just the final radiograph for him this past Christmas. Any questions after case number 2? Okay. I don't see any questions. Okay, so case number 3 is an FP2 zirconia complete upper denture, complete lower denture. So we're going to be utilizing a few more of our things in our digital armamentarium here. So I'm going to tell you right now, this was a mistake because right from this shot here, we should have taken our DSD pictures. But by the way these teeth look, I was like, yeah, it was kind of like, he just said he wants to go forward with the case. But I'm just being honest here with you. Take that record because it was showed us right from the get-go that his midline is shifted, right? And so if we utilize this as the midline, we're going to be shifted over. He also has a very interesting bite as well. So we did all the records, photographs. We skipped DSD initially. Don't skip DSD. Utilize DSD. It's really easy and it's really fast to use. We scanned him, CBCT as well, intraoral scanner, sent it off to Rebel Dental for a 3D design so we could design where the implants were going to be. And then I didn't do any designing myself. I outsourced that. And then we were able to use the printing. So we got up to about level 5 in this case. And level 6 obviously is milling. We did mill his final prosthesis for him. So you can sort of see the lateral views here. Just a lot of decay for this particular patient. And when we take a look at the Panorax, you can sort of see that there's good bone in position A, kind of really not good bone in position B, and position C is kind of deficient. So we'll be looking at least a sinus lift over here. And in this particular case, we ended up not doing a sinus lift for the patient. We just ended up placing the implant into the septum here, which I felt would give us adequate retention for him. He was also driving in from a city, and I didn't want to do bilateral sinus lifts for him. So here's the 3D planning for him, utilizing a program called Co-Diagnostics from Straumann Neodent. So what you can do in this program is you can import the STL file scan. You can also import the STL file for the design, so that you can see where the positions of the teeth are going to be, and also figure out what the exactly what your tilted implants and what type and brand of angulation of multi-unit abutments you're going to need to have. So in this particular patient's case, we've had a guide printed for him. So here's the imported file of the proposed prosthesis, and you can sort of see the incisal edges are showing up in blue. You can change these to whatever color you want, by the way. Light blue here is his existing teeth, so you can see they're unfortunately caries and they're rotten. And you can also get an occlusal view of this as well. Make sure coming out the inside the lingual, so not like the previous case where we ended up having to put multi-unit abutments on to move the screw position. Mandible, same sort of picture here. Just get an idea of kind of where things are going to be, where you want to place your implants, what type of reduction do you want for this particular patient. So once again, you can have a guide made, either tooth-borne, tissue-borne, or bone-supported, which is pretty sweet. And it tells you exactly which implants you need to, implants and sizes you need. You know, you even tracks the nerve for you, tells you where the nerve is. And I'm a really big fan of this system. So this is a surgical skin marker for the maxilla. Just basically, I use these intraoperatively to indicate where our smile line is. This will get an idea of where we want that transition line, if it's going to be an FP2 or FP3 prosthesis. The last thing you want is the patient to be smiling, and you can sort of see where the transition line is. Like, I have one patient, she had vertical maxillary excess, and we reduced her. Well, we didn't reduce her enough because you can only reduce so much, right? She needed a maxillary impaction, like with a Fort 1 impaction, and when she smiles, you can't see it, but when she smiles really big, you can see the transition line. And I'm like, please don't smile that much, and don't tell him I did this. But anyway, like, what's the thing? We're going to bring her in for a reverse frenectomy to reduce how much she can pull with the levator labii superioris and levator anguloris. The other option you have is just to Botox those muscles. But anyway, just a little bit of an aside there. This is a surgical skin marker. It's something called Genetian Violet. It's biocompatible. So don't use your Sharpie. Use the surgical skin marker. And then basically implants are placed for him. Once again, sinus lift. So you can sort of see the window there. Implants are placed in the mandible. And a week later, stitches and stuff are taken out. And here's the money shot, right? So, we had the temporary printed to where his natural teeth were. Had we taken the DSD shot right from the get-go, we would have seen that there's this shift, right? That's a sizable shift. Okay, now, how come I didn't notice it? We didn't take the DSD shot, right? So we took it, at this stage here. And of course, it's an easy fix. Just scan it, send it back to the lab. Using ExoCAD, they can shift everything for you. So they corrected that for us. And then we also had them make a mandibular transitional or temporary that we could print as well. So that's the scan bodies in place. These are from Neodent. They go right onto the multi-unit abutments. And at the first bite, didn't come back right. They kind of had them biting like this. So what I'm just trying to get at here is just because you use digital, there's still things are still prone to error. So the white is where the previous temporary was made, and then the green is the new one with the corrected bite for the patient. So we had to print that up. Take the healing abutments, the multi-unit covers off, place the prosthesis. Once again, we didn't use Rosen screws. Rosen screws would have been ideal in this sort of case, but Rosen screws on there, and try that in and trial everything out. So there's the maxillary temporary for him. Once again, we didn't use the Anax Dent kit to characterize the gingival aspects on the acrylic. And you can also see some rough edges here from us using the Fabuluster to try to polish this case up. As I mentioned, I just learned of this. Is just take some resin with a brush and light cure it, and it finishes off beautifully. A nice smooth, silky smooth finish for the patient. And in this particular case, we didn't bother with the lower temporary. You can see the corrected temporary, so everyone's happy now. You know, you can see the occlusal plane looks good, the midlines look good, and that was the transitional mandibular, but it'd been long enough in his particular case. He was wearing his denture. He was happy with that. We just went straight to the, it was about 2 months in, we just went straight to the final prosthesis for him. If we need to modify that, I'm more comfortable doing that than giving him a plastic on top of plastic teeth. And once again, you can sort of see the midline is shifted in the mandible as well. So that's when we inserted that for him. You can see that the bite was a bit off, so we had to adjust that maxillary temporary for him. And then eventually we were able to give him a final prosthesis whereby, you know, he had zirconia in the maxilla, zirconia in the mandible. There's his bite, looks pretty good. Once again, DSD just to make sure everything looks good. And there's the final radiograph for this individual. You can see the sinus lift over here. You can see the tooth in the septum, sorry, the implant in the septum here, a couple of tilted implants in position B, and just straight implants in the mandible. I also left some root tips in there, as you can see. They become an issue later down the road. We'll take them out for the patient. Okay, any questions after case 3?
Yeah, there is one. Is Dr. Awadallah again? You know, the well-known, by the way, Dr. Awadallah. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Awadallah. He indicates the upper side is showing as if it is too long. I guess he's talking for the last case, Waji.
Upper
Yep,
right.
the upper side is showing as if it is too long.
I mean, it might be. It might be. It just might be the way his bite is, right? Let's see here. The right side. Yeah. I mean, like ultimately, you know, these are minor corrections that you always have to do with every case. With any of my cases, we don't just give them the tail light warranty. So, you know, when they go out the door, we always bring them back for follow-up and stuff. And sometimes patients will come back and say that, you know, they feel like they're biting their cheek, or they feel something's like too long or too short. Once again, easy to do, just modify things intraorally. And if you need to send something back to the lab, you can send it back to the lab. Okay, so case number 3.
Wait a minute.
I see it.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you ever have problems scanning full arch cases with scan bodies? Are they accurate as analog impression? So first of all, Hasib's my Pakistani brother. I gotta give you a shout out, bro. He also told me not to drop any swear words this time. Apparently I dropped some bombs last time. So anyway, I haven't had any problems scanning. But what I'll tell you is this: is that if you talk to the gurus, they'll tell you that scanning still is not as accurate, right, as a PVS impression or infragram or any of those sorts of things, right? So we still typically, for big cases, like the next case I'm going to show you, we scanned her for a temporary. The final prosthesis is going to be PVS impression, okay? Jordan says, do patients typically have a backup for the fixed zirconia cases? Generally, I don't. What I would recommend is scan it, right? Scan the prosthesis. And you know, have a copy of that, and you can typically have some sort of a printed temporary for the patient. I do know some clinicians who basically will have 2 prostheses made for any case, just because people come in and, you know, they broke the zirconia, they broke the cantilever, they chipped something, they're biting in a fork, and you're like, why are you biting a fork, man? You're supposed to bite the food, not the fork. Generally, they'll have 1 or 2 prostheses made. Just for those sorts of circumstances. Once again, that's an excellent question. So having something back up is always good. Of course, there's a cost to that, and so you're going to have to discuss that with the patient in advance if they're going to be prepared to pay for that cost, or increase your fee to be reflected of that. Some of these zirconia prostheses, depending on the lab you use, they're like $6,000 or $7,000 each just for the prosthesis, right? So getting a second one made, like, I mean, that's $14,000 in lab fee. That's just lab fee, right? So depending on what you're charging per arch, you know, I feel more comfortable giving them, you know, having something that you can print, just because you can probably print something off in like 20-30 minutes. And then, you know, not using the Fabuluster and pumice, but using the polishing technique that we show you in this case, just with a little bit of resin that you cure, you can make them look pretty decent. Okay. All right. So bonus case here. This isn't denture. So this lovely patient comes to see me. She's Mrs. Salamone. She's from Sicily, right? So beautiful lady. She's having a what's it called? Her granddaughter's getting married this summer, so she wants to have a nice smile. So you can sort of see here, this is kind of what she has, which is existing. Just some dentistry. It's decent dentistry, but it's failing, unfortunately. You can see she has a deep, she probably could be opened up a little bit. She has some bridges in the posterior that are basically, you know, and she has a heavy overbite. So that's going to be the plan for her down the road. But right now, she just wants us to focus on the maxilla and get that looking decent. So using our DSD, basically, you take your facial thirds, facial fifths, and take a look at that cant as well in the maxilla. And then you basically take a high quality photograph and you can sort of overlay that on top. You see there's a bit of a midline shift for her. Bring the overlay pattern in just to give her an idea of kind of where, you know, what nice looking teeth kind of look like. And then there's the shot that basically you present to the patient along with the previous ones to show how you got there. It takes me about 5 minutes to generate these pictures. Is it exact DSD? It's not exact DSD, but I mean, I'm not going to sit there and measure out each tooth and the gingival position and all that sort of stuff. We're just here to sort of present the patient kind of what things kind of look like, right? Remember, faster, cheaper, better, right? So we want things to look good for the person, right? So ultimately, her sheepers came in asking us to remove all of her teeth and give her an all-on-X prosthesis, right? And after reviewing the CBCT, you know, doing an intraoral exam, you know, periodontal exam, charting her and a bunch of other things, I was like, you know what? What's the point of you know, extracting all these teeth? We're dentists. We can do magic. We can move apart. So I eventually just said, you know, what we're going to do for you? We're going to place 6 implants for you in the maxilla, and we're going to try to save the rest of your teeth. She has a periapical lesion on this tooth right over here, so we're going to do endo on that. That's going to get a crown. This tooth's going to go. She'll get an implant here and here, implant here and here and here eventually. But the rest of these teeth, we're going to try to save them and just have sort of like a tooth and implant design. And so you can just sort of see there's tons of bone. This lady also had tons of tissue. So she needs some connective tissue grafts. We were able to do a procedure called Robin Hood surgery. The term was coined by my colleague, Dr. Snezana Paul in Croatia. But basically, Robin Hood is like take from the rich, give to the poor, right? So you basically take the tissue from where you're operating, where there's tons of it, and you move it to another surgical site where you need it. Robin Hood surgery, what a brilliant name. I wish I came up with that. So anterior, once again, you can sort of see adequate bone. We're gonna have to graft a little bit of bone there on the lateral incisor position. And then finally, we have this molar. So no sinus work or anything crazy in this particular case. Once again, sent this off to Rebel Dental Visagi Smile, utilizing the questionnaire. Once again, look that up, Dr. Gurel, G-U-R-E-L. Look up the article, Visagi Smile, V-I-S-A-G-I-S-M-I-L-E. It's called Visagism in Dentistry. And this questionnaire that comes along with it's kind of cool. It just sort of helps match the face to the patient's teeth and their personality, right? So you know, once again, you know, they send us a little overlay of where the teeth are going to be. We can use this to sort of, you know, use our guide to put the implants into the perfect position. It also tells me what size multi-unit abutments or abutments I'm going to need in her case. In this particular case, we're going to scan her, have some custom tie base or custom abutments designed and then milled for the final prosthesis. So this is an example of Rebel. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I had this picture. That's Rebel Dental. That's the app. So you send them the picture and they read the face over for the patient. And then with the questionnaire, they eventually send you a design. And then with the design, they send you this STL file, which you can rotate around in many directions. And it's basically, you can stitch it to the CBCT data because they actually maintain some of her existing teeth. So you can pick those points to help match the CBCT data. And there's just a picture of it. If I unclick, we can actually, if I get out of the PowerPoint, I can actually show you this thing moving around. So there's the guide that's been made for her, right? And let's get going. So take off some of this failed dentistry. And I always hate taking these things off because sometimes it's like a Pandora's box. There's like caries and all types of other crap going on, and things get added on. So in her case, we're going to try to do what we call verti preps. Basically, I forgot the guy who did the study, but it's just a thin razor margin. And it's the way enamel naturally finishes on dentin, and you get a beautiful gingival response. So some of these prostheses come off. I always give the patients their gold back in case they want to, make a necklace or something. Once again, just cutting these things off, and it's like you just sort of see this disaster underneath many of these, right? And so finally, before we took any of the teeth off, we utilized the guide because it's a tooth-borne guide, and just drilled our pilot osteotomies to give us an idea of where the implants are supposed to go. Once again, with this crown prep, I'm like, come on, seriously? Like, what, do you use a machete here or something? So we're going to clean that up for her. These are the verti preps. You can see they look a lot better than where we started. Now let's go and place some implants for her. You can see there's a bit of a soft and hard tissue deficit here. We're planning on grafting it, but it's going to look better if we put some soft tissue here for her as well. So we're going to steal some from either here or over here and do that Robin Hood procedure. So those pilot osteotomies have been placed. Implants are all placed. They look gorgeous, nice and parallel. You can see the endo I did for her a couple of days earlier because we're going to put a crown on this tooth for her. And also it's a natural tooth in the posterior, so it helps maintain a good natural tooth in the back that's not going to break for us. Tissue on the palate, you see how thick that is, so that's a beautiful CT donor site. We placed the 2-6 implant for her as well, along with a verti prep on those other abutment teeth, so you can sort of see everything looks great. So our verti prep's we're going to finish somewhere around here and here. Same thing here. You can see there's no margins on these, which is just gorgeous. Razor type zirconia margin. You can cement it with glass ionomer, and the tissue looks amazing when you're done. So in the anterior, you can see I cleaned up the machete shot here, trying to utilize that verti prep technique. It's called biologically oriented prosthetics techniques, BOPT. If you Google BOPT and oral health, there was an excellent article in that about 2 or 3 years ago. So there's the pilot osteotomies that have been placed, okay? And so I just make my incision right here, and you can sort of visualize the bone. Look how much tissue you got there. I wanted to take that tissue too, but I don't. It's not classic Robin Hood surgery. I kind of wanted to have something that we can anchor our graft to. Otherwise, things just kind of sink down. So implants are placed. Obviously, we're not going parallel here because this is a lateral incisor, so you want to be coming out the lingual, not be coming out this way off the incisal. And so there's the implants that are placed. There's a radiograph. That looks really nice for me. Law of unforeseen consequences. When we're cutting this crown off, the whole friggin' crown broke. So I'm going to have to do endo on this too and do a core buildup for her, utilizing our biologically oriented prosthetic techniques for her just prior to us doing our final impressions for her. And so there's the connective tissue that we stole. We stitched that in with a mattress suture for her, bone graft mixed with IPRF. If you don't utilize PRF, you should use it. Mixed with some amoxicillin and metronidazole bone graft material, antibiotic as well. I like to mix antibiotic in my bone graft just because these are avascular grafts. You're basically giving someone a glorified pus bag sort of thing. So a little bit of antibiotic in there because it's not vascularized will sort of help in case something, some bugs and stuff get inside there. So those are all placed, things are released, and you can see that we got a really nice soft tissue contour here for her. We're actually going to go back and, we actually are going to go back in this presentation. See, we're going to do more grafting for right there. So this is just utilizing a putty wash stent and just standard Bisacryl Pro Temp material to make it temporary for her. Yeah, it doesn't look that great. I was like, okay, so she's going out the door. It's okay. We'll bring her back. There's a radiograph of all the implants that have been placed without the temporary on. You can just sort of see the extrusion of those mandibular lower teeth. But when we do the mandible, we're going to correct all of these occlusal plane issues for her. Or actually, I might even do it when we insert the maxilla to get the mandible to exactly where we want it. So she comes back a week later, and that's where things are ahead. They look good, man. And even just with the verti preps on the temps, they look gorgeous. We're going to make it look better. So we take the temporaries off for this lovely patient, and you sort of see some nice fiber and healing there for her, along with the sutures, which we remove at this point in time. And once the sutures are removed, we bring her back a week later again. And now I scan her because we're going to scan her to make some temporaries, okay? So there, you see this beautiful tissue in that anterior region. Put the scan bodies on, clean up the tissue as best I can, and then we upload the STL files This is a printed temporary. It's a little bit better than the one we made in the mouth with the Bisichrome material, but you can sort of see that there's a little bit of recession here. I wouldn't mind beefing up the connective tissue here. And we just did that this past week. So the scan comes back, and the lab in our office, we're able to print these temporaries for her. So these are direct to fixture temporaries for this individual, along with, I was just trialing custom abutment from this design company as well, and just printed that. I liked it, so I sent it off to a third-party mill to get it milled. I like using third-party mills just because there's no point in, having my staff do it in the office. You're maintaining the thing. That there's so many third-party mills out there these days, and for a very reasonable fee, you can get stuff milled pretty nicely to use. And that's the temporaries in for her. So once again, we didn't use the Fabuluster and pumice. We just used the drill to sort of help, create these rough edges on here, and then just a little bit of bonding resin, and these look absolutely gorgeous for her. So there's everything placed with the radiograph. You can see everything seated absolutely nicely. It just looks gorgeous, right? Except I didn't load this one over here. This one didn't have the great, her bone was soft. So I don't want to be a cowboy and sit there and, 6 weeks out of surgery, put a tampon. So I said, let's bridge these two together. This will be fine for now. And when we do the final, we have the healing abutments on there for her. So here's us going back to that palette, our honey hole palette, and basically taking some more connective tissue graft, suture that area up for her, clean that up for her. And then there's that anterior region on that central incisor. Sorry about the overexposed photograph. Make sure we have adequate pull here. And then it's the matter of, once again, you see I'm beefing up the connective tissue over here. Now that we have the temps in place, we're gonna get some beautiful tissue there for this lovely lady. Everything gets sutured up for her. And that's the temporaries in place with just a little bit of bonding resin. It's a bonding resin to polish up those temporaries. And when she comes back, I'm just expecting this to have a beautiful gingival response. So that's the bonus case for you. So summary and conclusions, really, digital dentistry is great. Digital planning is great. Get into photography, get the DSD templates, take pictures of your cases, intraoral scanning, and using CT scanning to plan your implant cases is great. The 3D planning software, I'm just getting into ExoCAD and stuff like that. But if you want to get into that, that's another area. If you want to outsource the design work, there's lots of, like I said, labs that'll do that for you. Printing is something which is fairly affordable to keep in office for things like dentures or temporaries and stuff like that. Milling, as I mentioned, it's just more efficient to outsource milling. There's lots of great milling centers out there that you can utilize, and lots of labs that will help you finish that here locally. So a couple of references. I'm not sure if I utilize these references, but it's a couple of references for you. Carl Misch there. And on behalf of the Catwoods Dental Implant Institute, I want to thank you for your time this morning.
I don't know, but let me figure this. Yes, so.
Yes, Theo.
A comment. Now, yeah, there's another question that Dr. Awadallah had sent. Wajid.
I think Awadallah is going to take me out for dinner or something.
No. This is, like the scary thing with him is he has a question. Okay, you got to answer quickly. He said, "Do you think the previous case? We're going back to case number 3, Wajid, could be treated with root canals and crowns?" Case number 3. Number 3, yeah.
You could make that argument. I've done that before. The problem with hindsight is hindsight's always 20/20. I've had patients who we've tried to rehabilitate and change. They just become disasters. Can implants fail? Can the all-on-X implant case fail? Absolutely. You have a patient who's prone to periodontal disease, and the host immune response is going to destroy things. Things can fail. So ultimately, you need to sit there and have a big boy chat or big girl chat with people, and basically say to them, "Hey, man, I'm an honest person. This is what we want." The problem with a lot of these cases is whose dime are you doing it on, right? So, if you're gonna sit there and do endo, and I've done this before, do endo for patients, and core crown build up, place crowns for them. And everything's great, but then they come back and things are fractured. Like I had one kid in one time, literally he had plaque all over his. We just fixed his teeth for him, and he comes back and there's 2 weeks of plaque all over his teeth. And I won't say I yelled at him, but I was like, dude, what are you doing? I literally worked hard. He was on ODSP. I was like, I worked hard to help you out, right? And I think this is kind of a funny story. I was like, you got to take better care of yourself, man. I was like, I worked hard for you. I want to give you teeth. Like, you know, like he was 16 years old. I know you gotta, don't make bad choices in life. You're gonna regret these choices. And he had some a black mark here on his forehead, right? And Tori's gonna laugh at this one. And I said, hey, come on, work on your personal hygiene too. What's with the dust on your face? It was Ash Wednesday.
What
I didn't
do you?
He was in Catholic school. I didn't realize on Ash Wednesday they put.
Yeah, they put the cross on the forehead. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Anyways, Wajid, finishing with Dr. Awadallah, okay, like, you know, the way he is, I gotta read this comment because it summarizes that lecture
Oh,
today. Okay? It is a new one. He says, you are a genius. The profession should be very proud of you. Now,
Yeah.
you should take that very seriously, because if he thought it was crap or poo-poo, he would also tell you in front of everybody, this was poo-poo, Wajid. Why don't you quit and find another job?
Hey,
So,
I'm just a humble servant of God, Ashraf. I'm just a humble servant of God. I'm lucky, you know, I almost died in a car accident last April. So I'm just, you know, I'm just grateful that, you know, the guy up there gave me another chance to go out and practice, my friend. So I'm just a humble servant.
Wajid, I have a question, because you're using a lot of you know, Neodent, Straumann Neodent, that code diagnostic system. Okay, can you use it even if you don't use the Straumann or Neodent implants?
You can use you can
In
use
one of the cases you mentioned that, you know, and then you had a lot of stuff that you were mentioning on them.
you can use any system with it, any system.
Okay.
So you can use, so code diagnostics, you can make a guide for any system, right? You can print a guide for any system, right? Same
Okay.
thing with like in vivo and Automage, that's the other program I'm using just to show patient stuff. You can utilize any implant system.
Okay. Anyways, Wajid, what can I say? You know, like, I'm gonna send you the date for Spectrum Day Quebec, Montreal, because I want you to come there again this year. We had a fun 2 years ago. Okay. And I would like to thank you. The passion comes out, man. It was a new presentation. You know, next time I'm gonna invite Gom to I forgot to invite Larry because he likes to see when you speak, and then we would have had Ashraf and Gom. That would have been a great thing. Anyways, I thank you very, very much for your time. I thank Julian, and I'm gonna ask you to stop sharing so the other speakers can come on. And Wajid, you are the best. And what is this with this? Are you Super Mario's brother? Come on, tell me.
Luigi. I'm trying to be Italian. Right?
Luigi, yeah. Okay.
What's funny is this: the lady from Sicily. She's like, "You're a good-looking man. Shave that thing."
You know, I'm Sicilian. Okay, Wajid. Okay.
I know.
Okay. Well, thank you. Have a good weekend. Happy Family Day.
I got this one for you for today.
Oh man, I love it. I love it.
I had Tony at my office this week. We were talking about pens. So hey, okay, we'll talk later. I gotta grind. See you, man.
Okay, talk to you later. Go to work. Ciao. Thank you. Okay, now we're gonna move on. I'm gonna ask Alex Fowler and Milan Jovanovic, our second speaker, to come on board. Okay. Yeah, they gotta turn their video on and the audio. I made you guys co-host. So we'll wait and see what's happening. There they go. Hey, how are you? Where's Alex? Where's my friend Alex?
I think Alex is also Milan Jovanovic because
yeah, but I also let him in.
Yeah, I don't know where he is. Let's see here.
Not allowing to work. The second one is not allowing to work. Okay.
You know, I thought this coffee was going to get me going and excited, but seeing Waji's presentation and the energy,
he's always like that. No way. He's always like that. I tell you,
climb
he's a great
Mount
guy.
Everest after that one.
What are we gonna do with the second Milan? I guess that they won't, unless
He's
you
there.
go out.
Just scroll down.
Yeah.
There's another Milan.
Yes, but they're both co-hosts, and one will not allow to come in. If you look in the participants, he's not allowed. Milan came in, but Alex is also under the same link, which should be allowed to come in. Should we invite him again? Let me see if I can invite him again. But
Can
now
we
I don't
log
know
in
who-
another name?
Okay. No, it's both, they're both under Milan.
That's what I'm saying. Login with a different name.
No. Let me see what we can do. Which Milan are you though, Milan?
The real one.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I don't want to do this. I don't want to delete them totally. Not allowing my video to work. Okay. Sorry, still will not allow. You want to go out and come in? Let me talk to him. And then I'll do some do you have two? No, you don't have two monitors. You only have one monitor and two presentation. Now I cannot even communicate with him. So that
He
creates,
logged out.
yeah, he's locked out. Can you communicate with him? I gotta send him a text and say, can you go out and come in under a different name? Okay. And in the meantime, I'll do the, where is it? Where is Alex? Can you reach him, Milan? Can you send him a text? Because I cannot find him now.
Yes.
He's
you mean
back
that,
in.
sir.
He's
Oh.
back in?
Scroll down.
Okay. Did he come in under his own name this time or Milan again?
He's under Milan again.
He's saying he's I'm locked, and just the start, I guess. It's okay. I mean, I can introduce myself. Not the end of the world.
Yeah, you know what? No, I wanted to say a few words. And I was, you know what? I tell you something, Milan. I was surprised. I don't know if you were listening to Waji. I don't know that you guys, I'm talking about Neodent, Strowman Neodent, because we always work with you guys on the implant side. You guys have so much, you know, like, I mean, he was using so much of the Neodent, the Strowman Neodent materials, and you know, like, I mean, and I know you guys also have printers and you have milling machines, and you're like, it is unbelievable what you guys have. I'm gonna make him a co-host now. Make the second guy. Let me see if it works. But anyways, as hey.
There we go. All
Alex,
right.
you know, thank you again for sponsoring, you know, like a great speaker like Milan. But you know, I was starting to babble on. I said, man, you guys, Strowman Neodent, I mean, you guys are known for, you know, implants, okay, and so on and so forth, okay, everything related. But I didn't know that you guys have resins and you have milling machines and you have printers, and you know, those are big kept secrets, I think, or they're, you know, like and you guys can provide support because you have already the support for the implant side. It is unbelievable. But I would like to thank you, you know, like for sponsoring, you know, like, I mean, the Dentures meeting, you know, the SDA for us. And if you were there early in the morning, is, you know, we made an agreement, an alliance, a partnership with the DAO, with the Dentures Association of Ontario, and they're 590 strong. So they're buying for their members all the SDA lectures and all the TIA lectures, which I think is a fantastic move, you know, like, and I think this is going to go across Canada too, because there's other people that are involved. But tell us, Alex, you know, what's going on with Neodent Strowman? I know that whatever I ask, you guys support. Anything in education, you guys are, and it's working because you guys are #1 in the world. So whatever is going on, it's working. So I'll leave it to you.
Thanks, Ettore. Yeah, sorry about the technical difficulties. I know it's 7 a.m. for some of you in the West Coast, so I thought I'd give you time for a coffee. So it was all on purpose.
Yeah, oh, nice. Yeah.
So although it says my name is Milan Jovanovic, I'm Alex Fuller. Sometimes I wish I was Milan, but My name is Alex Fuller. I'm the regional sales director for Straumann and Neodent in the digital team for Central Ontario. So downtown Toronto, Northern Ontario, East and West. I'm sure I've met many of you on the call here. But thank you, Tori, for having us. Always a pleasure to sponsor any of the pulmonary publishing events in person or virtual. And I want to give a quick shout out to Waji. Waji's a personal friend of mine. I've been working with him for probably 6 or 7 years. I'm not sure if he's still on the call or not, but Waji is one of the most generous people I've ever met in this industry. He's helped me out a lot, both with patients, with helping me learn in this job. So a quick shout out to Waji. He's one of the best. And then just a few things on Straumann. So Tori, you kind of nailed it. I think it's really important, especially talking to a group of primarily denturists, lab technicians. We are a lot more than just an implant company. In the last few years, it's pivoted to much more of a dental company than a dental implant company. A digital dental company at that. So 3D printing, intraoral scanning, milling, design softwares for prosthetics and surgical. And that's been a lot of the focus. But I think what's really important is what more than just products, what Straumann can bring is more a community networking and connecting of people. So especially with a group of denturists on the call here, I'm sure there's some dentists as well, and maybe some lab technicians, but primarily denturists. I would encourage you to lean on your Straumann representatives to build a network for you. So if you're a new denturist or an established denturist and you're looking to build a network of surgeons to work with, general dentists, periodontists, oral surgeons, to work with for doing some surgery for your patients. If you're looking for other denturists to partner up with, lean on your sales representatives from Straumann. They can help you connect in your communities. They know who the skilled surgeons are, geographically who might make sense. And we've done a really good job building some of these relationships and really taking some win-win relationships, helping the denturist, helping the clinician out to really build some amazing relationships to lead to more business and to really help patients. So more than just products and services, I would encourage you to lean on your representatives to really help build your business. And then lastly, Milan. Tori, I'm not sure if you want to do the formal introduction, but I think you're all really going to enjoy this lecture. Milan put a lot of work into tailoring this directly to the audience we have on the call today. So we know we've got a virtual room full of denturists who maybe sometimes don't get all the same amount of love on the CE sector and lecture circuit. So Milan's put a lot of work into making this special for you guys. He is an incredible representation of Straumann, but also an incredible lab technician, an expert on digital dentistry, a great resource for us and for you guys. I encourage you to reach out to him if you have questions in the future about dentures, 3D printing dentures, what's new in digital dentistry for denturists. So I'll leave it at that. Tori, thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure, and I'll pass it off to Milan.
Thank you, Alex. It's always a pleasure to work with you, and we'll plan something together for the Dentura side. Okay.
Sounds great.
Let me tell you guys before a quick introduction for Milan. Last year I received this honorary degree from George Brown for what we've done for the industry, and I think what really captivated the evening, the night before, we met with the dean and the superior to the dean, and they were thinking, on how to make George Brown, the dental component, denturists and technicians known worldwide. And Deepak was there too. And then it was my turn to speak, and so I told them, I said, you know what, guys, I hate to say this, but the times where most of the high-end removable, because in Europe there are no denturists, they're removable technicians, and to have people that are famous all over the world, you do have some people that are known and they are a source of knowledge and they're gifted. I said, well, you have this Eric Kukuchka, you have Mark Chan, you have Milan Jovanovic, you have Carlos Zanon, who also teaches in Maine. And I go, these guys are all graduates of George Brown. So you should not be thinking too much because it's going on already. You just got to figure out how to market it. So, but that's what, let me go on and introduce them. Yes, Milan Jovanovic is a graduate of George Brown College. Okay, he graduated as a dental technician. He was licensed in 2011. He has worked in a small size and mid-size and large lab environments. He also spent 6 years working for a GP's office, developing his understanding of prosthetic from a clinician perspective. And it is there that he developed higher understanding of implant cases and made him what the special, source of knowledge that he is today. He has 9 years of CAD/CAM experience. More than 6 were spent learning and developing digital workflows. Is familiar with numerous technology, including Nobel Procera, Dental Wings, Rona Ceric, 3Shape, and iTero. But since 2018, Milan has been a steady force. You know, he's been a force and a source of information for the lab division of Stroman Group. And I always love it when we have him on, okay? I always love him. And so I'm glad that Alex allowed us to have him on. I'm going to turn it over, share your screen, and do what you do best, Milan. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks for the introduction, Alex and Tori. I'm honored to be here, and appreciate the kind words. And yeah, you know, to those points, I kind of feel like, yeah, a lot of the times when we speak to the Denturists, you know, it's a lot of recycled material from a lot of the other stuff that we present. So you know, my whole thing to you guys today is like, I really did try to cater this presentation specifically for Denturists. And I know we're going to continue to keep doing this. You know, we're going to do more presentations and more education. So my ask of you guys is, give us feedback. Give me feedback. Give me stuff that you would like, stuff that you didn't like, and let's improve and let's work on that, because this is what it's all about. Like, I'm not going to learn anything from you guys if you guys don't give me feedback. So let me know what you like, let me know what you didn't like, and let me know what maybe you want to learn more about. And in the next iteration of these presentations, we can definitely add those things and do more. So I'm excited to do that. Okay, so who can share? Let's share screen here. All right, can you guys see my? Let's close this, minimize that. Let's go on the slide. It's good to go now, right?
Yes, yes, we see the screen, and and yeah, it's giant. It's taking the whole screen.
Okay, awesome. Good. Okay, so, you know, obviously today's topic is going to be immediacy, printing, and guided surgery, right? And so let's get right into it, right? So the agenda is, what we're going to look at is, we're going to look at dentures and the traditional denture workflow versus the digital denture workflow. We're going to look at some printing solutions. We're going to highlight patient expectations. We're going to look at, obviously, immediacy and guided surgery and how they tie into the whole picture. And then, of course, the benefits of digital for implant procedures. And then we'll finish it off with some Q&A. I'm not going to go through the slide, as both Alex and Tori definitely showered me with all the compliments on this. But this is if anything, a little picture of me working in the lab many years ago. Okay, so let's start off with printing. This is the first topic I think we're going to cover here. Whoa, my trigger finger's getting excited. Okay, so let's look at the traditional workflow of dentures. I think it's important to kind of always follow these 3 steps. With any type of prosthetic procedure, I always believe there's 3 essential steps, which is essentially data acquisition, design and plan, and manufacturing. You're going to see this sort of slide repeat itself over through this presentation, but with different steps along the way. So, of course, impressions, you know, some sort of a setup, and then, of course, manufacturing. So let's take a deeper dive. And this is going to be obviously all familiar for you guys. You guys do this on a daily basis. So, of course, you know, we take an initial impression. We take the impression, we come back, then we might take a custom impression to get a better, more accurate impression of the patient's mouth. Then we'll do some sort of a bite block or occlusal rim to achieve a bite, you know, and landmarks, midline, occlusal plane, and so on and so forth. And we're going to try that in. Once we're happy with that, we then take that occlusal rim and we convert it into a denture setup. We insert that denture in wax and see how well it fits. Whatever adjustments need to be made, we make. And then, of course, we go ahead and, you know, invest, process the denture, and then the final insert. So let's kind of break that traditional workflow down and what it looks like, right? And this is obviously the traditional sort of workflow. Can it be done a little bit quicker? Sure, there's always shortcuts, but let's just kind of look at sort of the quote unquote traditional way, right? So with the first impression, that's one day that the patient has to come in, then we fabricate the custom trace. Then there's the final impression with the custom trace. So that's the second day that the patient has to come in, the bite block design, trying of that, 3 days, wax denture, 4 days, process denture, and then insert denture, 5 days. So specifically, like, the actual process itself is going to take more than 5 days. But I think the key thing here to highlight is the amount of times that the patient has to come to the office. So around 5 days for quote unquote a traditional workflow. Now, looking at the full digital workflow, it all starts with the intraoral scanner, and it's what's really unique about the denturist profession. And obviously in Canada we're unique. Tori made a mention of it, that a lot of different places in the world don't really have dentures, but I think Canada is unique in that regard. And it really does all start with the intraoral scanner as far as digitizing. Now, yes, you can take a traditional impression and use a latch scanner to scan a model as well. That's true. But because you guys are hybrid role and you both clinicians and technicians, you guys definitely can start digitizing the patient right from the mouth. And so, in the full digital scope, I think it really does all start with an intraoral scanner. And we do have a lot of denturists picking up scanners. And the actual cool thing about intraoral scanners is you can actually scan models. There's a lot of people that use intraoral scanners to scan models. Maybe they don't feel super comfortable. Waji mentioned that there's certain cases that he doesn't feel comfortable scanning. We scan a model with an intraoral scanner. They're quite accurate and will give you quite a good result. So once again, same slide, except here we're scanning. We're then planning something out and designing and software, and then manufacturing with a 3D printer. So let's look at the steps and what that looks like. So of course, patient comes in, you scan them with your intraoral scanner. The scans will look something along this. You can see we've got a fully edentulous maxilla and mandible. Of course, we're going to take that information and load it into our CAD/CAM software. We're going to design a denture. So instead of designing an occlusal rim, we're already going to design a mock-up denture. Then what we're going to do is we're going to actually print it in this Trine material. So it's a white material. It's low cost and inexpensive to print. And then we're going to try that in. At this point, we can make whatever adjustments we want to make, just as we would with a bite block. And then what we can do is one of two things. One, if everything looks good and we're happy with the bite and the positioning of the teeth, we can right away take that information and print our final denture. Or if there's some minor changes that we need to do, well, we can go back to our software and make those minor changes, move some teeth around or whatever. But more importantly, where the flexibility really lies is during that same appointment. Let's say there's some significant changes that you're making on this Trine denture. You can now maybe make some, you can trim some teeth, you can make some specific adjustments, and you can actually scan that patient or those changes in again and use that data and stack it over your existing data and make those changes all together within the software. So you don't have to kind of keep seeing the patient multiple times. So you can actually capture that data of the changes that you've made, overlay that information over your existing data, and then actually put those changes into the CAD software and then print that in your final prosthesis, which obviously is going to look something like this. And then of course the final insert, which will be something like this. And there on the left-hand side, you can see the teeth printed and then the teeth bound to the actual denture base. Oh, and actually what I wanted to show you guys is actually something cool. So I'm not going to go through the actual design process, okay, but I wanted to show you guys this, we talk about it, there's pictures of it, that's great, but I actually wanted to show you the software. So to be honest, I'm not an expert at designing dentures on CAD/CAM software, but I have a demo case here and I actually wanted to show you guys. So here, this happens to be a, what is it called? These happen to be models that were scanned. We didn't scan the patient intraorally. So we have our lower model. We also scanned in the bite blocks. So we did traditional bite blocks in this case. And so we merged them to the mandible. And of course, we're going to load in our maxilla. And then what we're going to do, we can see that we marked this in the analog world. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply that information here, midline, plane of occlusion in the digital world. We're going to remove our, our bite blocks. So now we have a nicely articulated maxilla and mandible. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set the teeth. So here are teeth set, obviously, looks good. And then of course we can apply our gingiva. And then of course to top it all off, this is not just done, in just arbitrarily. We can also populate a fully adjustable or semi-adjustable articulator. There's many different articulators available. And then of course you can actually even do a guidance on this. So pretty cool stuff. I'm not going to get into too much detail on how to do this, but I just wanted to show you guys that, hey, there's an actual software that exists for this. I know you guys see a lot of slides on this, but here it is in real time. So let's go back to the presentation. Cool. So, and then let's take a sort of a look at the digital workflow, right? So data acquisition, one day for the patient to come in to scan. We do the denture design. They come in to try and the try-in denture, the white denture. If we need to scan or make any adjustments, we can do that same day. And then of course, we'll on our end then make the changes on the software, print the denture, and then of course the patient comes in and we insert that denture. And of course, this is not always going to go so smooth. There's going to be instances where this is going to, take a little bit longer. But let's say in an ideal world or in an ideal situation, which definitely does happen, you can shave off a good few days doing the digital workflow, and of course the efficiency that comes with it, right? So what are the benefits of digital dentures, right? Well, of course, as we saw, there's less steps. One of them was, the replacement of the occlusal rim. Another big one is the easy duplication, right? Like, you can duplicate the occlusal rim information, let's say or not the occlusal rim information, but the try-in information. If it's good, you can basically take that same information, make your denture with it. The other thing is, let's say 6 months, 2 years down the road, that patient loses their denture or something happens with the denture. It's easy to duplicate because you still have that information. Even if you have to take another scan because maybe the bone has changed, you can still use that information, take some new information and overlay that information to fabricate a new denture. So it's quite easy. It's easier adjustment, right? Like instead of having to, change to move teeth around with a wax and like a knife and a Bunsen burner, it's all done in software or a handpiece or whatever. So much easier adjustment. Of course, better fitting. CAD/CAM and scanning is obviously much more accurate than traditional impressions. Less appointments. This is obviously beneficial for both you and the patient, and it's more effective and streamlined, right? Like the sharing of data and information is much quicker. You don't have to be at the bench to do a lot of this stuff. You can literally be in your bed working on your computer. Of course, you can't print in your bed, but a lot of the work can be done off-site in a sense. And we didn't really get into it too much, but it's also much easier workflow for fixed bar cases because as the traditional dentures, you can also design dentures on top of bars. And then these dentures can be recreated. So like once again, with traditional or with bar dentures, once you do let's say a wraparound, that denture is kind of stuck. And then to duplicate that denture is a lot of work. But with digital, you have that file and it's much easier to recreate that denture in the future if you need to. So, what is the reality of acquiring a 3D printer or 3D printing, right? And I think it's important to kind of look at where we came from and sort of the traditional 3D printing and what it looked like. And so, let's say 7, 8 years ago when, kind of printers really hit the market, there wasn't too many options available. And, one of the biggest problems with printers is, they were the size of like a fridge and, nobody had the space for that, right? So that was one challenge. The other challenge is they were really, really expensive. I remember when I was in the lab, I outsourced all of my printed models because, it made no sense to buy a printer at the time. They were, anywhere between like $100,000 to $250,000 to buy, an industrial grade printer because that's all they really had for dentistry. There was a lot of auxiliary components that you really needed to run these things. And then of course the post-processing wasn't ideal. There was an alcohol smell, right? So in a traditional post-processing scenario, you'd have like a ultrasonic with 2 beakers and basically alcohol in those 2 beakers, which kind of was exposed to the air. And so it was in the room that this took place in was very smelly because the alcohol always had a very strong odor. It was very messy because you'd have to take this, printed model and then it had all this uncured resin on it and you had to put it into the one beaker, wait for it to do its thing, then take it out, put it into the other beaker. When I went down to the Arlington facility back like 4 years ago when they were still doing this with Straumann, and I remember doing this process as well. It was not fun. If you're not wearing gloves, good luck trying to take that resin off your hands. And then of course, a little known thing about was the incomplete curing. So I remember in the lab, we would get these models and they would always have this tacky feeling to them. And then if you'd steam it, it would kind of like wash away this layer of this tackiness. And what that was actually was incomplete curing. So when you cure resin, in an oxygen-rich environment, it basically creates this layer that's not fully cured. And really what that means is you kind of have an inaccurate model. So whatever the layer of that uncured resin is essentially, it's not accurate. So what used to happen a lot was, I would wash away this uncured layer, and then let's say I was doing a crown, I would put the crown, and I know on my scan everything fit perfect, but when I put the crown on, all of a sudden I'd lose contact. So then I'd have to have contacts, and then I give it to the doctor, and the doctor's like, well, the contacts are too tight. And so this was one of the primary reasons of that, is because of this incomplete curing. So the industry figured it out. And so at the time, they didn't really have a good solution. So they're like, well, why don't we just plug some nitrogen gas into these curing units, and that'll do the trick. So that's what we did. And then you had to get a nitrogen tank, plug it into your curing unit, and basically run nitrogen gas, which obviously was another headache to have to do. But that's what we had to do. That was what was the best at the time, right? So here's some of the challenges with traditional printing. But in this day and age, it's a little different. Yep.
Milan, sorry for interrupting. There's
Yeah,
a question that I just noticed from Carlos Zanon. And he says, what technique did you use to take the bite at the first appointment?
Are you talking about, like, can we get a little bit more clarity on the question?
Yeah, Carlos. Okay, you go on, and then I'll get back to when the clarity comes in.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's see.
So this is a P20 printing unit from Straumann Group with its wash and cure, and this is the amount of space it takes up, right? You need about 2 feet in height, about 3 feet in length, and about 1.5 feet in depth. So this can fit on most countertops. We're seeing a lot of success with these printers with dentists, primarily general practitioners. They're getting them for in-house workflows, and a lot of times these just sit on a bench in an op somewhere. Here you have the P-Cure, which is basically where the models are cured, and at the bottom is the P-Wash. So essentially how it would work, the P-Wash, you basically pull that little drawer out, you throw your what is it called? Your objects, your denture, your models in, you close it. On the right-hand side here, the little tower has the alcohol. It showers the objects. Once that cycle is done, you pull it out, and then the top portion, the cure unit, you open it up, you pop your models in, and it starts curing. And what's unique about this particular curing unit is that it actually has a built-in vacuum, so it sucks out all the oxygen, and you get complete curing. So quite a nice little bundle package. And let's be honest, there's lots of different printers out on the market that are very similar to this, but of course, this happens to be a Straumann one. So we've come quite a long way as far as printing technology. And so some of the benefits of the P20 printer, of course, as we mentioned, it's got a small footprint. It's got a relatively low cost of entry compared to some of the traditional printers. I think nowadays with printing technology, you can for a good dental use printer with DLP type technology, you're looking anywhere between $15,000 to $25,000 for a printer, which is quite, I think, cost effective. What's unique about this printer as well is it has access to basically all materials that fire at 385 nanometers wavelength. So it's a completely open system. Yes, the manufacturer has a lot of its own resins, but if there's specific resins from other manufacturers that you'd like to use, it's a completely open system. It's quite fast. Of course, it uses the DLP technology, which shoots it projects the layer all at once instead of kind of drawing it out as some of the more old school printers where the SLA technology has to draw out each layer, which was a much more time consuming process. And then the force feedback is a feature specific to the P20 that basically measures the amount of force it takes for the build plate to remove from the reservoir. And so by doing that, that can actually increase the speed performance by 20 to 30% compared to its competitors. Of course, the easy post-processing, we've kind of covered that with the P-Wash and the P-Cure. It's all an enclosed system and very easy to use. And of course, printing in general is an additive process, so it's very cost effective. Unlike milling, we have a block and a burr, cuts out, 50% of what, of the block and just kind of goes to waste. Additive processes are much better because it basically uses as much material as it needs, and all the rest of the resin stays in the reservoir, which can be reused for another, purpose. So some of the indications with 3D printers, right? You know, when printers first came out, like really the only things people were really printing with printers were like models, and that was about it. And that's why it didn't really make too much sense for a lot of people to buy printers. But now, like, you can pretty much print anything, right? You can print models, gingival mask, night guards. Night guards are huge right now. Crown and bridge, there's a lot of work being done here for permanent resin as well. Surgical guys, which we're going to get into a little bit more. Of course, denture bases and teeth. The try-in materials, castable patterns for people that still want to cast things, custom trays, which may be a little bit redundant if you're scanning, and of course more in development. I think printing technology or printing market right now is just blowing up, and essentially as long as a resin exists for it, it can print, right? The software and the printers themselves can pretty much do anything. It's really a matter of the manufacturers coming out with resins that are, you know, resins that are capable of doing what the appliance needs to do, right? But as far as design and printing goes, pretty much printers and software can do it. Okay, so let's shift gears and let's kind of go into immediacy, right? And what is immediacy? And Ettore, I don't know if there's a follow-up on that question or if you wanted to answer it at the end.
Yeah, Milan, that is, okay? Carlo continues, says, you go straight to the try-in from the first appointment. How did you align the maxillary and the mandibular arches and transfer this data to the program without the occlusal rim? The case is totally edentulous and no natural teeth to use as a guide.
Oh, so yeah, so for in that particular, so there was two examples. One was sort of the pathway of scanning, and then the other one was the software. So in the software, we definitely did use an occlusal rim. We scanned the models. There was an occlusal rim that was manufactured, and we then set teeth based on the biplex. I'm not really sure I'm understanding the question.
You know what? If the question is not cleared up at the end,
Sure.
I will make Carlos Zanon a co-host, and he'll come on and we'll discuss it. I think that's going to happen in the future. Okay,
Yeah, absolutely,
on,
for sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so what is immediacy, right? So, you know, I Googled it, immediacy, the quality of bringing one direct and instant involvement with something. Okay, cool. Giving rise to a sense of urgency and excitement. So, okay, yeah, that's a pretty good description of immediacy. But what's really immediacy in the dental industry, right? And I think the first thing we think of when we think of immediacy, or at least I do, is this, right? Is, you know, scanning a patient and then, you know, milling a crown, right? So, you know, Dentsply, or not Dentsply at the time, it was Sirona alone. Now it's Dentsply Sirona, but back in the day, Sirona kind of came up with the system, and they were very successful with it. You know, essentially you scan a patient, and then the same day you design and you mill a crown. And so for me, this was like the first thing when I think of immediacy. This is what kind of comes to mind. So this is still a thing, and it's still very successful, and it's still something we do day to day. When it comes to implants, this actually is still immediacy in a lot of people's opinions. So traditionally, a lot of the times, what would happen is in implant dentistry is the doctor would, you know, check the patient out, the tooth is compromised. Okay, so then they would basically take the tooth out, maybe do some grafting if grafting needed to take place, and then basically patch that patient up for like 6 months. And then the patient would come back in again. Then they would open up the patient again, drill, place the implant, and then once again, patient goes back in healing. So this process used to be very, very time consuming. And then somebody came up with the idea like, well, why are we doing this? When we pull this tooth out, it actually creates a pretty nice little space for the implant. So immediacy for the longest time meant that you pull the tooth out, you place the implant, and then you let the healing take place, which saved a significant amount of time. And so once again, this was an improvement in the overall procedure. And that's what immediacy to a lot of people for dental implants still means. And of course, for denturists, this maybe is a form of immediacy that you guys are familiar with, right? You know, patient maybe got into I don't know, maybe they fell off their bike, or maybe they were playing hockey and a puck hit their tooth, or I don't know, maybe they just got into a street fight and lost a tooth or two, right? And, you know, they got a wedding, or they got to go to the job interview or whatever it might be, and they need a quick fix, right? So they come and you take a quick impression, and, you know, flipper you can manufacture in an hour and a half. And so, you know, you make this for it. I mean, this is a form of immediacy, and we still do this, and it's great. But how do we elevate this this level of immediacy? How do we elevate immediacy in the dental industry, right? And I think it's by providing the implant and prosthetics the same day. And so the challenge, of course, as we kind of discussed, is dental implant procedures traditionally take the longest and have the highest patient disruption. And case acceptance becomes more challenging. How do we overcome it? I would argue that in all dental procedures, probably implants is one of the hardest ones to actually make a go, because there's so many nuances to it. And then basically a lot of the times the patient's like, yeah, you know what? It's a little bit too much for me. I don't want to do this. So how do we overcome these challenges? Because we know implant procedures are actually some of the, the best procedures for patients' health and functionality, and best in compared to some of the other more traditional procedures. So how do we overcome the challenges that come with trying to convince the patient? And so I think the important thing we need to do is we need to actually look at the key patient criteria. Sometimes we focus so much on like, well, the strength and the longevity and all these kind of stuff. And a lot of times the patient's not really thinking that way. So I think it's important to kind of think about what the patient really wants, right? And I think it's to always have teeth. That's one of the things we've kind of realized over the last few years, is that patient never wants to walk into an appointment, lose a tooth, or come in with no teeth because they lost teeth, and then walk out with no teeth. That's sort of like, I think the number one thing is patient want to leave basically looking as they've looked before whatever happened to them. Then of course, the key things, which are aesthetics, they want to look nice. They obviously want to be able to talk and function with their teeth. They want it done as soon as possible. They don't, they want this thing to take 8 to 9 months. They want minimal disruption to schedule, and who doesn't, right? I don't want to come into to an office 8 or 9 times and have all these procedures done, because that's what it takes. I want it done quicker. I don't want to be coming in as many times. If there's a solution for me to come 5 times or 4 times, I might choose that over, because everyone's schedule is important to them. Of course, the minimal surgical morbidity, right, is one we don't really talk about or think about too much. But the last thing the patient wants to hear is like, well, we're going to have to cut this tooth out, and then we're going to have to wait for it to heal, and you have to come back for some grafting, and then you have to wait to heal again, and then finally we're going to place some implants. So not only is this time consuming, but there's a lot of stress that the body has to go through. Patients aren't keen on that. And then of course, last but not least, is the cost, right? Cost is always going to be a factor with anything that anyone has to purchase. But I would argue that if you can meet the first 6 criteria of a patient, you can definitely, the cost becomes not as important to them. So also, I think it's important to kind of realize what the patient doesn't care about, right? The patient doesn't care about implant surface technology. They're not interested in any of that. And to be honest, they'll probably go over their heads. The material specs, they don't really care about what kind of resin you're using, or the specs on the teeth, and whatever the teeth might have, special features that the teeth might have that you're going to be using. The ideal workflow, in the sense that like, well, we need to do this and we need to do that, because that's sort of the ideal workflow. They don't really care about that. And to be frank, they don't want to know the case challenges. Like, it's important for you to obviously be open and transparent with your patients, but the more the smooth this process goes, the better it is for the patient, and the more willing they are to kind of go with this. And so these are kind of the things that the patient doesn't care about, and things that we should kind of maybe not focus as much on when we're having our conversations with our patients. And so I always kind of do this slide. I'm going to quickly kind of run through it. Amazon Prime, everyone's familiar with it, what they do, delivery of packages within 24 hours if you have Prime. Uber, a significant improvement on taxi services. You can literally get an Uber in 2 to 3 minutes to take you anywhere. Instacart, this was a big one during COVID. Everybody just ordered groceries, and that was super convenient. And of course, Netflix, which I don't think anyone's going to be using anymore. The whole new scandal that's going on with them. But before that, Netflix was super popular. You can binge watch whatever show you want, and of course there's a lot of other streaming services out there. And so what all these services have in common? Well, they're very customer centric services, right? And how do they do that? Well, they do it through immediacy, convenience, and easiness for their customers. And so how do we apply the success of customer centric services to dentistry? Well, we do the exact same thing. We provide them with immediacy, convenience, and easiness. And that's basically what we do. So I'm a big believer of, working smart, not hard. And, a lot of the times there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes you just got to look at certain other industries and what they do successfully, and apply those principles to your industry, and you can be quite successful with it. And so let's take a look at something interesting, right? I think we obviously know, we kind of hashed out what it is. It's teeth in a day. That's what patients want. And I pulled this from a website, and I'll get to where exactly I pulled it from in a second. So teeth in a day. So this website basically kind of, this is their ad: attract natural looking teeth, help us look and feel our best. Loss or damage of one or more teeth have considerable impact on quality of life and self-confidence. So right, like they're not really talking about what teeth in a day is. They're kind of more saying, they're kind of tugging at the emotional heartstrings of like what this looks like if you don't have teeth in the day. And then kind of go into more detail of what is teeth in a day, all in 4 treatments. So this is obviously full arch, and they kind of describe it a little bit more. Implant system designed to allow you to walk out into our office without teeth, and same day with teeth with 4 permanent implants. Okay, like that's pretty descriptive. That kind of nails nails the nail on the head, if you will. And then of course they talk about the benefits of teeth in a day, implant therapy, and all that kind of stuff. Now I'm not going to read through all the stuff, but it's all sort of the benefits of all the stuff. And so this isn't something new, right? This has existed for a little bit of time now, this teeth in a day concept. But really, it's like, how are we doing this, right? And there's traditional ways to do this, and then there's new ways to do this, which I think are much more effective and better for all parties involved in the process. This is actually pulled from, I literally Googled immediacy in dentistry, and this was like the first thing that came up on a local dental office website that does this. And I don't know how they do this, but this is what they've had. And so I thought it was important to share, because this is definitely now people are doing this. Okay, so once again, we're going to take a look at the traditional workflow of immediacy with prosthetics and implants in the same go. And so once again, we're going to do our data acquisition. So usually, it'll be some sort of X-ray, some sort of information acquisition of the bone and the teeth. And then of course, we're going to take some sort of preliminary impression. This is what it's going to look like. This happens to be 3 teeth that we want to place implants for. So we pour the models up, we'll wax up 3 teeth where they are in the most ideal prosthetic position. And then of course, we'll make some sort of rudimentary guide where we'll put holes through the middle of the teeth. And this is where we want the surgeon to place the implants. And this is okay. This at the very least guides the surgeon in where the prosthetic needs to be. But we're not taking any consideration as far as like what the bone looks like underneath there, where the nerves are, and any other type of complications that could potentially happen. But this is what we did for a very long time. And of course, traditional ways of temporization, as we know, is the traditional flipper. Implant goes in, and a lot of times the flipper is made ahead of time so the patient can walk out with something, so they don't have a missing tooth. Then there's that suck down with teeth inserted into it, which is really not a great idea, because after 2 weeks that thing gets full of nasty bacteria, so not an ideal one. And then of course the last one, which is probably the best one, is the tooth, and the dentist actually makes a temporary crown directly on the abutment that sits on the implant, which is actually very good, but a very time-consuming process. And of course, for full arch type of situation, we have something like this. So you guys might make a denture, or you guys probably will make a denture, or maybe the patient has an existing denture. And then what we have to do is we have to convert this denture and basically put these massive holes into it after the implants are placed, which is once again a very time-consuming process. On average, doing it the analog way, and I've been in quite a few surgeries with either a denturist or a lab tech converting a denture for single arch, can take up to 4 hours for the whole procedure to take place, from when the patient sits in the chair to when the patient has an inserted denture that's fixed in their mouth. So very time-consuming process. So let's take a look at the full digital workflow. Of what this looks like, or what could look like. So I'm going to start with data acquisition. So we're going to scan the patient, and then we're also going to take a CBCT scan, which is going to provide a DICOM file. Then what we're going to do is we're going to use some software to plan and design this. And of course, we're going to manufacture it with a 3D printer. Okay, so this software here, actually, Dr. Waji Khan talked about this software called Agnostics. And so we're actually going to do a little bit of a deep dive on how to use the software. And I think maybe, Tori, in the future, we can actually do a whole presentation just on co-diagnostics and implant planning and prosthetic planning on full arch type of cases, which I think would be pretty cool. But I just took a few slides here to kind of obviously, consider time to show you guys what this sort of look like. So this patient right here, as you can see, their mandible has a few teeth, their maxilla has quite a few more teeth. We're going to be working on the mandible here, but this is what the DICOM data looks like. Essentially, this is the data that came from the CBCT scanner, and this is essentially kind of what it looks like, right? So not really useful to us right now, so we need to use the software to essentially segment this information and isolate what we want to work on, which is the mandible, right? So here's our mandible. Here are the teeth that that are kind of showing on the mandible, and I think these teeth are going to end up getting removed because we want to do a full arch type of restoration here. So first thing we're going to do is, now we've isolated the mandible, what we need to do is we need to, of course, mark our nerves. So here we mark our nerves, indicated by the purple little lines here, so we know where the nerves are going to be. And then with our scan, we're going to overlay this. We're going to take the STL data from our intraoral scanner. We're going to overlay it here. Now we can see here, this particular scenario, we used a traditional model. Whether this was scanned with an intraoral scanner or a lab scanner is irrelevant, but it's STL information that's now overlaid or hyperimposed over the DICOM data. And this is going to be very important for a few steps coming up, and I'll get into that into a little bit more detail. Okay, so we overlaid that. We know everything's merged. We're good. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to virtually remove the teeth, right? So you can see here, we sliced all the teeth off, and this is what we kind of proposed. So we virtually did that with the tools and the software. And then what we're going to do is we're going to place our 4 implants and making sure that we're not impinging on the nerves anywhere. But as you can see, the implants aren't quite ideally positioned from a prosthetic perspective because we have, different angles. So it's actually cool about this particular software is if you want to use multi-unit abutments, which like most of the time is the case for a lot of these full arch cases, you can actually auto-populate your multi-unit abutments, and they will actually auto-correct based on the best path of insertion. So you choose the multi-unit abutments, and they will automatically rotate themselves in such a way that it will, give you the best path of insertion. So we can see here significant improvement of parallelism between these screw holes, which will make it a lot easier for us to insert our prosthesis. So once we have that, we're gonna place our sleeves virtually. So these sleeves are gonna basically be used to guide the drills and, of course, the implants into the osteotomy that we prep. We're also gonna put these pins in. See, so these yellow pins, they're put into the bone to essentially hold everything down. These pins are super important because they're going to basically hold the whole guide and all the pieces that go on top of the guide in place. And then, of course, we're going to put sleeves for those pins, and the sleeves are going to sit within the guides themselves. And then we're going to go back to that STL file. And the reason that STL file is super important is because STL information is a lot more accurate. The surface information is a lot more accurate than the DICOM information. So when we make a guide, a tooth-borne guide, we definitely want the STL information, because if we do it directly to the DICOM data, there's a good chance it's not going to be very accurate. Now, if we're doing a bone-supported guide, then that's a different story. But tooth-supported guides, we always want STL information. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create this first guide, which is the pin guide. So essentially, all this guide serves for is where we're going to place those pins. So the guide goes on, we drill holes in those respective areas, place our pins, and then this guide goes away. Why this guide is super important and why this information is super important is because everything that follows will be based off of those pins. And if that guide did not fit perfectly and those pins are in the wrong position, everything will be lopsided and our surgery will not go according to plan. So that's why it's super information to have quality data. Okay, so now we remove that pin guide, and then we use those same pins to secure our bone reduction guide. So essentially this guide gets pinned in once we flap the patient, once we open them up, and then the doctor will then use a burr to essentially, well, first they'll extract the teeth in the traditional sense, and then they'll use some sort of a burr to essentially shave off all the bone and flatten it out. Once they do that, And we can also generate a model. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's kind of ghosted underneath where it says bone demo. You can also actually generate a model of the reduced bone. And we'll look at that in a second, but you can actually, from this DICOM data, you can actually generate a actual physical STL file for a model, which we can print after. So we got our bone reduction guide. Then we're gonna design our osteotomy guide. So this guide basically, as you can see, sits on top of that bone reduction guide with those little saddles, if you will. And then of course, we're gonna populate our sleeves. And then this guide's basically gonna be used to drill and place our implants fully guided. And then last but not least, we're also gonna design a prosthetic virtually. So this prosthetic is going to once again sit exactly on that bone reduction guide with those little saddles. So not only is this prosthetic going to sit in the most ideal position based on the initial case plan, but it's also going to have holes pre-drilled into it based on the plan. So now when the implants are placed, the multi-unit abutments are placed, and the temp cylinders are placed, when we put this prosthetic on, the holes will actually align perfectly, and very little adjusting will have to take place to actually put this prosthesis on. Now, what's super unique about this whole procedure is all this takes place before we ever actually cut the patient, right? All we did was the patient came in, we scanned them, we did a CBCT scan, and all the stuff was pre-planned and done way before the patient ever gets cut. And so by the time this is all said and done, the patient will essentially be able to walk away with fixed dentition. And this is what it looks like sort of printed, right? So on the left-hand side, we have the, this is like the surgical protocol. It'll print out a bunch of images and the actual surgical protocol for the process for the doctor to follow. But this here on the right-hand side is what the actual printed versions of it look like. So we have our model with the teeth and our pin guide. Then of course our model that we printed with the removed teeth and our bone reduction guide. And of course, our osteotomy guide with the sleeves. And last but not least, our prosthetic. And you can see the prosthetic has the pre-drilled holes in it. And so, actually, you know what I'll do? We do have a little bit of time, so I will show you guys this. And once again, here's this case. And like I said, we don't really have a lot of time. So once again, this is a whole other presentation, but here's this case right here, right? And here are all these different guides that was worked on. So this is a demo case, of course, but this is something that a lot of these offices do on a regular basis. And here it is right here. So I've played with this, and the software is available to really anyone, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So benefits of immediacy and full arch, right? Well, I think the big one is the same day teeth, right? I think that's sort of, if anything, the most important point is the same day teeth. The patient wants teeth that same day, and that's what we're providing with this procedure. Predictability, right? I think the other big thing is we don't really talk about it too much, but is the predictability, right? We're able to plan everything and predictably get the results that we planned on. Now, let's be honest, things don't always go 100%. And sometimes we have to make adjustments. Maybe the guide, maybe the guide doesn't go all the way through, but a lot of the stuff that we have is pre-planned. And so like that temporary prosthetic can still be used, and some of these tools can still be used to complete the procedure. But the key thing is in 80% of the situations where we do use this, we have a lot of predictability and we kind of know what the case is going to turn out to look like. Aesthetics and function, which of course are primary things for our patients. It's a fixed solution. I think the big thing with patients and what we're noticing is, everybody wants the idea, like it's weird. You talk to a patient and you talk to them about a removable denture versus a fixed denture, and in theory, it's almost like the same thing. It's the same material. It's the same teeth, but the idea of the fact that it's fixed in their mouth is psychologically more important. So they do get caught up on that a lot, and so a fixed solution is really important for a lot of patients. Better fitting temporary because everything was planned. And yeah, everything was planned, and we were able to adjust or fit it to the guide and have everything fit in an ideal position. Reduced appointments, right? With this procedure, we're able to reduce, the amount of appointments we have to do. Traditional method like this, if we did it in the traditional way, it could literally take months. We're able to reduce the time within a few days, and then depending on the implants you use and depending on the healing of the patient, we could probably complete this case in like 4 months, which is pretty significant. And of course, reduce chair time. So, and I'll mention a gentleman in just a second, but on average, like I was saying, a single arch takes about 4 hours from start to finish to do the surgery, like let's say 4 implants and then to convert. We've seen times as quick as 1.5 hours to 2 hours on average for a full arch case to be done with this method. So you're literally cutting the time in half, maybe even a little bit more, depending on how proficient you get at it. And then of course, case acceptance, right? By providing all the needs to the customer, to the patient, the case acceptance will significantly increase. And of course, a lot of this technology can be acquired, by anyone, like the Dentures can buy, the labs can buy, the clinicians can buy it. But of course, there's a lot of, Straumann Smile in a Box offers the same service. So all the stuff that I just basically discussed with you guys, they offer. So all you really need to do is send them the information, the STL file, the DICOM file, and they'll actually plan and design and even manufacture all the components for you. So we do have a lot of clinicians, Dentures and labs utilizing the service. And what usually we find is as they get more and more comfortable with it, then they'll start acquiring the pieces of the puzzle themselves. And what's also cool about Smile in a Box is that it's a modular system, or a la carte, if you will, in the sense that like once you acquire certain pieces of the puzzle, they'll just fill in the blanks. So you're not forced to kind of do the whole thing with them. You can kind of pick and choose which points of service you want them to do for you, right? But you can see here they do the planning, design, production, post-processing, and all that good stuff. Something to think about, right? In a denture conversion, so like, and I've talked to quite a few denturists, quite a few lab technicians, and do this, easily $2,000+ in a single appointment for a full upper lower in generated income. So we have a few denturists and lab techs that do work with a lot of specialists that do a lot of these types of procedures, and $2,000 is the minimum that I've heard them charge for a single appointment to do a full denture conversion. Immediacy through guided cuts conversion time significantly. So we talked about that. You can cut it in half. So you can technically do two or upper lower full arch. So basically 2 patients in one day if you get really, really effective at it. So like in an 8-hour day, that is. Dentures can use implant planning software. I think it's important for you guys to know this. I think a lot of the times, and even talk to a lot of labs, and like, well, what do I know about implant planning and stuff like that? Listen, there's a lot of training out there for a lot of these different softwares. And at the end of the day, the surgeon, the person who's going to actually be cutting the patient and doing the surgery, has to check off on everything. So we are seeing an increase in denturists using this software and planning cases. And it might not, it might not be something that's like traditional or common, but our industry is changing so much that I think this is going to become very normal. So I want to encourage you guys and empower you guys to actually get more involved, because the more involved you guys are with this, the more relationships you can kind of create with your surgeons or surgical GPs, and you can actually create a significant revenue stream. The one gentleman I'll mention just after this, basically all he does is this type of stuff, and he's been doing really well for himself. He's made a good partnership with a surgeon. He's based out of Cleveland, Ohio. And this is basically all they do. And he's got a whole website and whole following on that. And I'll share his information shortly. But you can really create a significant revenue stream by partnering up with a surgeon or a really surgical GP that does a lot of this type of stuff. And of course, most importantly, it elevates the standard of care and experience for the patients. And just to talk about the individual I'm discussing, his name is James Angelone, the Denture Man. I would definitely check him out. He's a big speaker, I know, for Straumann Group, but he's quite something. he basically talks a lot about these different procedures. He does a lot of lecturing. He's got a lot of videos. He's big on Instagram, and this is his game. And I would highly encourage for you guys to go and take a look at some of the stuff that he does and some of the stuff that he shares, because it's quite inspiring. And I think there's a lot of good potential with a lot of the stuff that he's discussing. Not a lot of people are doing this. I think there's a sea of opportunity for stuff like this. And that concludes my presentation. So guys, thank you so much for sitting through this with me. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Once again, open to criticism, feedback, and let me know what else you guys wanna hear about. And we'll
Milan?
Yep.
Can I see, I was gonna make a comment. Can I
Sure.
see the second last slide that you showed? And then I'm gonna read what Carlos Anon said, because he was gonna get in the car. Not this one, the next one. Can you go?
This one or this one?
Yeah, this one there, yeah.
Yep.
Yes. I'm gonna make, first of all, it's a great presentation. You always come in, always well prepared, and you share things that people need to think about and ask. Like it's unbelievable. Okay, like I'm so glad, like that we're able to access you. I was gonna make a comment for everybody in general.
Mm-hmm.
Your point, partnering with the surgeon or surgical GP can create a significant revenue stream. I always look, I publish Présence, which is for denturists in Quebec, okay? And there's 900 of them. There's about 950 denturists in Quebec, okay? But when I see, even though there's friction between the dentist and the denturists, there's a lot of this partner going on, and I've noticed it's been going on for many years. Like there's that, because I look at the ads, and there's always, denturists and surgeons, working together and marketing together in the French media magazine, dental media magazine. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if this goes on here. Maybe Carlo was going to get in a car and drive to Toronto. So he says he's going to listen, but he sent me the rest of the question. Okay. But I just wonder if anybody wants to, contribute to this. Does this go on in Ontario at a high rate? Because to me, it makes a lot of sense. I'm not a dental guy. I'm a business guy, but I don't know if it's as used as much in Ontario that it is in Quebec. So that's just a comment that I wanted to make. Okay. The other thing, I mean, I would like to get this Angeloni in, and I will reach out to him, because I've met him before, and he is a great guy. Another guy that I will try to get my hands on is, one of the top guys, because I see him, he's invited in all the Prestodontist Society meeting, is an Italian guy, Lucio Russo from the University of Foggia, and he's supposed to be the guru on intraoral scanner for edentulous patients. Okay. Let me see what Carlos said, and then we'll leave it up. New message. Okay. Okay, here's Carlos. He goes, "Hi, Tori. I'm going to transfer the video to my cell phone as I'm leaving for Toronto in a few minutes. We'll be listening. Not sure I will be able to communicate." It's okay, Carlo. We'll give you the answer. My question, your initial few slides at the beginning of the presentation was for a totally edentulous case scenario and how to save 2 appointments. It compared digital to analog traditional methods, 5 to 3. The first appointment, digital would require a bite technique that would transfer the plane of occlusion, smile line, midlines, etc. to the computer software. I believe you will still need an occlusal rim to do this when dealing with the total edentulous arch or the use of the existing dentures. This may require an extra appointment.
Yes, completely agree. And the fact of the matter is, at least from my personal experience, rarely do you get a patient walking in with fully edentulous. There's always going to be some form of established bite. But yes, you're absolutely right. If there is no denture in the patient's mouth, so if they're coming to you completely edentulous with no established vertical, of course you're going to have to establish a bite. and that will, of course, take an extra appointment. But like I said, in my personal experience, most of the time there's something in the patient's mouth, and the dentist or denturist can establish a bite and capture that digital information. But yes, of course, if there is no bite, you have to establish a bite, and that will take an extra appointment. No doubt
Okay.
about that.
Now, there was now somebody agreed, Muhammad Harris agreed. I think Fernando Pais wanted to comment on that. Is everything okay now, Fernando, or you want to comment? If you do, please, please join, like on the chat. Another thing, Milan, that it's so important, and it's Wajid mentioned it, okay? And when I first, because my background was not business until I went to get my MBA. And, as we were studying, we learned about, the things in the future were going to be faster, cheaper, and better. And I was getting into the dental because I started with the dental magazine only for technicians. Most of the technicians, 99% goes, it can't be done. You can only have 2 of the 3, or you can only have 1 of the 3, or, and I never understood it. But, I remember in my MBA where we saw a house built in 24 hours.
Wow.
24 hours and every, and then, and the professor says, did anybody think here can build a house in 24 hours? Well, they did it. They were drying paint with heaters. They were, that. Everything was just synchronized so well that they finished it. And I said to myself, yes, I think this can be, a faster, cheaper, better. And then you look at, then I look at what's happening in medical, in the medical world. I remember when my mom went to get her gallbladder out, they cut her from side to side. She had to stay 10 days. Now you get your gallbladder, you go home in the afternoon. Faster, cheaper, better. So, and now we have it, we have it in the dental world. Does it work in the dental world? Yes. Okay, let me tell you something, and then we'll go. There's a doctor, he still works, he's a young guy, Dr. Rami Rehal. Okay, I don't know if you guys know him. I usually bring him in at Spectrum Day. He's a digital guru, okay? Like he's the CEREC digital guy. And when I first met him, I met him because what made me interested in him was the fact that he had bought a Loblaw store or one of those fruit markets in Winnipeg, downtown Winnipeg, that had gone broke, and he had built a practice. Okay. And as dentists, struggle to have one, you should have 1,000 charts to do well, 850, like so on and so forth. I asked him, I said, Hammy, how many charts do you have? 30,000. So he had a humongous number of operatory. I don't know if it was 25 or 27, and then another 20, 24 for hygienists, and then he has a lab upstairs because he loves the lab work. And I asked him, I said, what is the trick? What do you market a lot? He goes, no. I go, well, how do you get so many people? And the answer was, they know us now for teeth in one day. People were going there because they know that in some cases, they were going to walk away and go home with, with their teeth. So that's a very, very good point. Again, I'm impressed with your code diagnostic, and we'll do more, because we'll do more. Let's see what Deepak says here. Deepak, what are you looking for? No, Fernando made a comment first. He said, a center tray can be used to establish a preliminary bite, to then go ahead and produce a 3D bite plate to establish a proper bite registration. So that's also an answer, I guess. Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Fernando.
Yeah. Now we go again. Now there's Deepak. He says, yeah, Deepak says, can Palmieri Media, well, Palmieri Media can do a few things, but not everything. Create a directory of potential dental surgeons through TIA, okay, Toronto Implant Academy, who can collaborate with newer denturists to help further this collaboration. And Ken Stroman, Neodent, facilitate this clinical collaboration. It's something that I will talk to Alex, Deepak. It's a good idea. It's a very good idea. Like I didn't even know that until last year, where they, Stroman Neodent sent me an article which was very popular, and I published it in Quebec. I translated that, they have mini implants. I didn't know that Strom, and I'm in the industry. So, they're so busy, like they're so busy with all the other work, and they're number one. So they're doing things correctly. But again, I didn't know that they, and I talked to Milan, like when we tested, I said, Milan, I didn't know, and they send us a case, and, like that I've used I translated in French and I put it in the Quebec magazine. Anyways.
One last thing.
Yeah.
On that topic, I think I might have found someone. So we'll discuss that later.
Yeah.
Give me a call next week, but I think I have a pretty good candidate on what we discussed earlier this week. So
there we go. Deepak, you're giving us another project. What am I going to do with you, Deepak? What am I going to do with you? Always creating work. Now, one more comment. TIA and SDA for Dentures education to get CDN are literally like TFSA and GIC. Okay, Deepak, we love that, but only, and I tell you something, we're lucky, okay, I'm lucky, and then people say, well, Ettore, what is your biggest success? And the biggest success for me is the ability that we have to access speakers like Milan and Waji and Hami, like all these guys, and friends like, Carlos and on. This guy, I met him when I was still teaching, is unbelievable. He's my editor for the magazine. It is unbelievable, okay? And they're generous with the time, they're talented, they're smart, and and they're committed to education, which that's what I am, okay? So Milan, I want to thank you. I want to thank Alex. I love it that you guys support our initiatives, and we'll keep you in mind. And we'll talk next week about what he mentioned, because it could be a very good thing indeed, couldn't it?
yeah, absolutely, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No, we love you. I want you to work on another article for us, because I still remember what a great job you did on the first one, man.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll work.
And you know what? You completed. We had the best mustache in Canada. I think Alex said it. Look, we have the best mustache in Canada, and now the best beard in Canada today. So thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Now we go to, guys. We're going to US. We're going to the US. And we're gonna go. No. Let me see what we're gonna do here. Let me go here. Derik. I hope Derik is ready. Derik. Okay, there's my friend Derik. I'm gonna make you a co-host, Derik, like we did, and then you can. Milan will stop sharing, and then Derik, you start sharing your screen, and then we'll get ready. Okay. So I don't see Derik yet.